The story takes place before everything has begun. At this moment, little Maria appears to be in a state of tranquility and harmony. However, inside the castle of Canterlot, a fierce argument is underway. A unicorn with a color scheme reminiscent of tomato and scrambled eggs is glaring angrily at a tall alicorn with a colorful, flowing mane, while a light yellow pony nearby helplessly covers her face with a hoof upon witnessing the scene. As everyone would have guessed, the two arguing ponies are none other than Princess Celestia, the ruler of Little Maria, and her student, Twilight Sparkle. Looking at Twilight's furious expression, Princess Celestia lets out a resigned sigh. "I am sorry, Twilight Sparkle, my student, but I'm afraid I still cannot agree to your request to go to that world." Hearing this, the tomato and scrambled egg colored pony's face fills with disbelief, as if she had just received some terrible news. "Teacher, why can't I explore that mirror? I have been trying to make more friends, just as you said. Why do you still refuse my request?" Seeing Twilight, who is indignant and yet somewhat stubborn, Princess Celestia takes a deep breath and prepares to scold her for her immaturity. However, recalling advice from another student, the reprimand turns into a gentle sigh. Princess Celestia looks at Twilight with kindness and gently strokes her mane with her hoof. "But so far, you only have Comet and Starlight as friends, right? And it's mostly because they're your junior classmates. But what does that have to do with making friends?" Twilight seems to soften at the gentle words, her defiance diminishing. Noticing this change, Princess Celestia speaks to her again with sincerity. "I don't want to deny your efforts, but the mirror connects to an unknown world, which may hold countless dangers. Only harmony and friendship can help us safely navigate through those dangers." However, Twilight doesn't buy that reasoning and quickly pushes away Princess Celestia's hoof from her head, showing a stubborn expression as she replies, "But teacher, you always use that excuse. I really can't make friends with those ponies at school. Plus, I already have the ability to protect myself. Friendship and harmony don't really matter that much." Just as Twilight finishes speaking, a voice with a strong royal tone suddenly resonates in the room. "Twilight Sparkle, stop, stop, stop." At this point, the light yellow pony quickly steps in to separate the two, halting their argument. Realizing that her previous words were indeed inappropriate, Twilight turns her head away in embarrassment, unable to look at Princess Celestia and Comet. Fortunately, the development of that thing is complete today, and if it works well, it should resolve their conflict entirely. Thinking this, Comet reaches out a hoof to turn Twilight's head back towards Princess Celestia and says, "All right, my big sister, there's no need to act like this. Our teacher isn't such a stingy pony, and didn't we agree to talk to her calmly?" After saying this, Comet gives Princess Celestia a knowing wink. Princess Celestia, having composed herself, nods at Twilight, agreeing with Comet's viewpoint. After all, this alicorn has thousands of years of experience and wouldn't let herself be angered by a young pony. Seeing that Princess Celestia really doesn't seem angry, Twilight, encouraged by Comet's supportive gaze, finally gathers her courage to look at Princess Celestia again. "I'm sorry, teacher. The reason I've been so eager to go to the other side of the mirror is that I want to be worthy of being your student to gain the recognition of others. I just don't want to be laughed at by others. I'm sorry." Upon hearing Twilight's heartfelt words, Princess Celestia feels a bit guilty. After all, she might indeed have been too strict and hasn't paid enough attention to Twilight's mental state, which has left her feeling so insecure. Thinking of this, Princess Celestia embraces Twilight again and gently says, "Child, this isn't your fault, it's my lack of attention to you. You have always been my recognized student, and you don't need to seek external validation so desperately." After hesitating for a moment, Twilight accepts Princess Celestia's embrace. "Thank you, teacher." Seeing the two reconcile, Comet happily raises her hooves in celebration. This shows that if they had been honest with each other earlier, things wouldn't have escalated to this point. However, there's no need for ponies to think everything through so clearly. After witnessing this touching scene, Comet suddenly remembers something and looks back at Princess Celestia. "By the way, I brought my new invention this time." After seeing this, "Teacher, you might feel more at ease letting my big sister go to the other side of the mirror." Hearing this, Twilight's attention is immediately captured. With her eyes shining, she quickly escapes Princess Celestia's embrace and rushes over to Comet, her eager eyes sparkling. "Wait, they might actually be shining." Comet quickly raises a hoof to shield herself from the light and the twinkling stars emanating from Twilight's eyes before pushing her aside. "Calm down, big sister. I only said it's a possibility. And don't cast magic on your own eyes." Meanwhile, Princess Celestia, who is watching this scene and chuckling, becomes curious. After all, based on the inventions Comet usually tinkers with, there might actually be something magical that could convince her. However, after reconciling with Twilight and feeling great, Princess Celestia jokingly says to Comet, "It seems you're quite confident. If what you bring out doesn't satisfy me, I might have to rummage through your lab. I mean, inspect it thoroughly. Don't worry. Teacher, this is my latest breakthrough. Comet, filled with confidence after hearing Princess Celestia's words, puffs out her chest and reaches for the bag she's carrying. However, the playful Princess Celestia suddenly flashes a mischievous smile and uses magic to snatch whatever is in Comet's bag before she can take it out. Princess Celestia pouts as she examines the silver hexagonal metal device embedded with a magical crystal, unable to resist rubbing her chin. Little Comet, this doesn't look very impressive. Chapter 2. Memories looking at this big kid who has lived for thousands of years, yet still fiddles with his communicator like a little foal. Even Comet Flicker can't help but feel a bit silent, although aware that his teacher's nature is like this. If the other little ponies saw this completely contrary demeanor to his usual sternness, it might just refresh their worldview. Just like the glow of the afterglow now. Comet Flicker couldn't help but chuckle a couple of times while watching the afterglow's jaw nearly drop to the ground. Then, Comet Flicker brought the two communicators in his hooves together, and after confirming the binding was successful, handed them back to Princess Cosmos and Afterglow. You just need to gently tap it with your hooves to activate it. I've already input your data into this communicator. Upon hearing Comet Flicker's words, Princess Cosmos and Afterglow placed their hooves on the communicators in front of them, and in the next moment, their projections appeared in front of each other through the communicator. Afterglow, clearly startled, almost threw the communicator out of her hooves, but at the last moment, she managed to control herself and not toss it at Comet Flicker's grinning face. However, Princess Cosmos appeared much calmer. After all, having often snuck into Comet Flicker's lab, she had seen much more than Afterglow. At this moment, she was smiling as she watched Afterglow's flustered expression projected from the communicator. Noticing Afterglow looking at her with puffed cheeks, Princess Cosmos quickly cleared her throat, put on a serious expression, and said to Comet Flicker, "It seems this device is an upgraded version of the communication crystal you developed earlier. Combined with what you said before, this should allow for cross-world communication?" "Exactly. As expected of my teacher, you guessed the most important function right away." Seemingly worried that Princess Cosmos might not trust him, Comet Flicker quickly added, "Moreover, I have already tested it repeatedly using the banishment spell. This communicator has extremely high resistance to various conditions and can maintain contact even if banished to another world. It also has an emergency teleportation function in critical situations." After finishing the introduction, Comet Flicker looked at Princess Cosmos, who appeared deep in thought, and said with a hint of pride, "With this, you should be able to confidently let senior sister go to that world to try her luck. Who knows, she might even make more friends in another world." Beside them, Afterglow quickly joined in, widening her eyes and putting on a pitiful look towards Princess Cosmos. "Please, teacher, I really can't make any friends at school right now. I beg you." Seeing her two students harmonizing, Princess Cosmos could only nod helplessly in agreement for this trip. "After all, you have reached this level. I should indeed let you go and gain some experience." Yay. Upon hearing Princess Cosmos finally agree, Afterglow and Comet Flicker joyfully clapped their hooves together. Princess Cosmos looked at the two little ones celebrating and couldn't help but feel both amused and exasperated. However, this feeling lasted only a moment, as when Comet Flicker brought out a specially made cake that was as tall as two Princess Cosmos, she immediately leaped in to join the celebration. "Teacher, please be mindful of your image. Don't bury your head in the cake. But here are my two adorable students, aren't they? Ah, they wouldn't betray their teacher." Saying this, Princess Cosmos took her head out of the cake and playfully winked at Afterglow and Comet Flicker. Of course, Comet Flicker, who had taken out a camera to capture the moment, said, "Ugh." Afterglow, witnessing this scene that again overturned her perceptions, let out a confused sound, but unexpectedly felt closer to Princess Cosmos. In any case, this crisis was completely resolved amidst laughter and delicious cake, and everyone was happy. After a brief celebration, Princess Cosmos left with Afterglow to prepare other things for crossing worlds before the next mirror opened. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, several years have passed since I came here. Back then, I had unexpectedly arrived in this world due to a seemingly random choice, becoming a little foal that no one recognized and could hardly control my own limbs. Where's this place? Ugh, my head hurts. A flash of white light appeared, and a light yellow little pony suddenly appeared in a forest, using his hooves to massage his head, which felt a bit dazed from just crossing over. After a while, he finally calmed down, and, after sorting through everything that had been implanted in his mind, the light yellow pony shakily stood up and began to observe the surroundings. He quickly discovered a clear stream nearby. Looking at his reflection in the water, he saw his light yellow figure, the pair of small wings on his back, and the shield emblem representing Team Ares on his rear. Comet Flicker soon realized he had probably arrived in the world of My Little Pony. So this should be the famous Everfree Forest? Next, I won't have to face the classic Timberwolf battle, right? Thinking of this, Comet Flicker glanced at his limbs, which still felt unfamiliar, and the small wings on his back that seemed only good for gliding, suddenly feeling a sense of hopelessness. After all, with his current abilities, it was inconceivable that he could take on those Timberwolves. He wasn't even a unicorn. It wasn't until he saw a few Pegasus ponies pushing clouds overhead that he realized he wasn't in the Everfree Forest at all, just an ordinary jungle. At this moment, Comet Flicker, who had been hiding, suddenly felt as if a red had appeared on his nose. Chapter 3. The past, however, at the same time. Comet Flicker also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, this meant he wouldn't have to fight the Timberwolves and could follow these Pegasus ponies to see if he could reach a nearby city. Without hesitation, seeing the Pegasus ponies gradually flying away, Comet Flicker quickly spread his hooves and chased after them. Along the way, he began to practice using the pair of wings on his back. Fortunately, it didn't seem too difficult to operate, and Comet Flicker soon got the hang of flying. Woohoo! Feeling the joy of flying, Comet Flicker couldn't help but raise his hooves and let out a cheerful shout. Under the puzzled gazes of a few Pegasus ponies, Comet Flicker nervously tucked his wings in and began to drop straight down. He desperately tried to unfold his wings again in midair, but they clearly hadn't obeyed him to that extent. In his frantic struggle, he merely changed the impact area from his rear to his poor face. Oh no! Watching the ground getting closer, Comet Flicker instinctively covered his eyes with his hooves, unable to bear to look. Fortunately, a nearby Pegasus pony quickly reached out a hoof to catch him upside down, saving him from a second fall to the ground. At this moment, still shaken, Comet Flicker took several deep breaths before turning to the Pegasus ponies beside him and forcing a smile. Thank you very much, but could you please turn me over? This is really uncomfortable. Putting aside the dizziness from being upside down, it was the first time in his life that Comet Flicker had his rear facing other creatures. Right now, he had nothing to cover himself with except for his tail. After being reminded by Comet Flicker, the Pegasus seemed to remember something and turned Comet Flicker around, lifting him by his armpits to examine him closely. Looking at this somewhat dazed little guy, the captain of the Pegasus squad was puzzled. How could such a small foal appear in this forest? However, she quickly gave up on pondering and chose to directly ask the little creature under her hoof. As they Pegasi were not good at thinking through complex problems. What is your name, little one? Comet Flicker. Where are your parents? How did you end up here all alone? I don't know. Maybe I don't have any. I also don't know how I got here. During this process, Comet Flicker curled up obediently, as he was literally under the physical control of the other. However, this scene appeared completely different in the eyes of the Pegasi. To them, Comet Flicker had turned into a pitiful, homeless little pony. They were actually speaking to him in such a harsh tone. At this moment, the leading Pegasus carefully extended her hoof to comfort Comet Flicker and softly asked, "Little Comet Flicker, is there anything we can help you with?" Although he didn't understand why they suddenly changed their attitude, after thinking for a while, Comet Flicker replied, "If possible, could you take me to the nearest city?" Upon hearing Comet Flicker's words, the Pegasi saluted him and made a promise to help. They placed Comet Flicker on a cloud they carried, and after settling him, the lead Pegasus called to the other Pegasi and began to move towards their destination. Sitting on the soft cloud, Comet Flicker couldn't help but exclaim, "The land of ponies really has a lot of good ponies." Then he was taken to Canterlot. And even when they left, the Pegasi patted his head and comforted him a few times. It was then he realized they had concocted a sad backstory for him. Although he tried to explain, it was all taken as the stubbornness of a strong little pony. In the end, Comet Flicker could only carry the dozen bits of horse bits they had forcibly given him, feeling somewhat depressed as he watched them fly away. Alright, it seems that sometimes too much enthusiasm isn't a good thing. I must repay this favor when I have money in the future. After silently noting their appearances and names in his heart, Comet Flicker officially began his journey in Canterlot. However, being a little pony made it hard for him to find a job, so he could only do small inventions to make money. Fortunately, some nobles seemed to particularly like the flashy but impractical things he made, allowing him to earn a decent amount from them. However, having money without status made it difficult for Comet Flicker to obtain rare metals and magical gems needed for making armor and such. Luckily, during a mining expedition, Comet Flicker unexpectedly encountered the concept deity, Rock, who was still in the process of growing. With her help, he found a suitable magical gem. And based on the Ares technology in his mind, Comet Flicker successfully pieced together a simple mind-use device. This device allowed him to use mind energy and perform some simple unicorn magic with the magical output from his body, even helping him train his mind energy and magic. By shaping it into a horn and covering his wings with clothing, Comet Flicker successfully blended into the Unicorn School to further study magic. However, misfortune struck during the Talent Unicorn Academy's assessment. While using teleportation magic, Comet Flicker mismanaged the force, causing a huge magical storm. Unfortunately, the cloak he used for concealment was ruined in this magical storm, turning into a pile of tattered fabric scattered by the wind. He himself was knocked out by a flower pot placed indoors by some malicious individual. In the last moment before losing consciousness, he saw a tall white figure with a colorful tail flying in, stopping the massive magical storm. "This is bad," was his last thought before fainting. Chapter 4. Memories end when the Cosmic Princess arrived. She immediately noticed the unusual horn on Comet Flicker's head. However, she did not expose him on the spot. Instead, after ensuring everyone else was settled, she said to the judges, "You may continue with the assessment. I will handle this little one's situation." After leaving the sentence, the Cosmic Princess took Comet Flicker and left the place directly. The unicorn judges, still reeling from the recent events, sat there in a daze. After all, it was quite beyond their understanding for a candidate to suddenly turn into a princess or prince in the middle of an assessment, especially one who had just knocked themselves out with a flower pot they had conjured. The Cosmic Princess's parting words as she rushed in to save the situation were particularly significant. Finally, one of the younger unicorns, regaining composure, murmured hesitantly, "By the way, does this count as royal secret?" Perhaps. Another judge took out their handkerchief to wipe the sweat from their forehead, feeling a bit shaken, and patted their chest. "But we better not delve too deeply into it." Indeed, his words received unanimous agreement from the other judges. "All right, let us continue with the assessment. This is a royal request. Then I'll go call the next student." At this moment, Comet Flicker, who had been unconscious for a while, finally began to wake up slowly. However, just as he regained consciousness, he felt a sudden sharp pain on his head. "Ouch, that hurts." As Comet Flicker tried to reach out a hoof to rub his poor head, he was startled by a large smiling face right in front of him. In his panic, Comet Flicker rolled backward, distancing himself from the figure. Only then did he see the pony's silhouette before him. With colorful flowing mane and a tall body adorned with a horn and wings, all of which clearly indicated her identity. However, her earlier gesture of poking at something and the mischievous smile on her face also hinted to Comet Flicker where the sharp pain on his head came from. "Your Highness, the Cosmic Princess, I." It must be said that the serious and stern Cosmic Princess indeed exuded a strong sense of pressure. After all, she had led the land of ponies for thousands of years. Under her stern gaze, Comet Flicker felt himself stammering and unable to say anything. Observing Comet Flicker's reaction, the Cosmic Princess slightly softened her imposing presence, took out Comet Flicker's horn, and looking at the frightened little pony who was even beginning to tremble, a smile involuntarily appeared on her face. The Cosmic Princess, feeling a long-lost mischievous idea arise from her heart, slowly approached Comet Flicker while whispering, "Look what I discovered. A little Pegasus using magic with a fake horn, trying to sneak into the Talent Unicorn Academy." No, it was not. As he watched the Cosmic Princess approaching him, Comet Flash could only use his somewhat exhausted hooves to slowly back away. However, it didn't take long for him to run out of space to retreat, and he had to watch helplessly as the Cosmic Princess, now seemingly more terrifying than 100,000 monsters that eat little ponies, continued to draw closer. Comet Flash's mind even began to imagine where the Cosmic Princess would start to dissect him for research, but Ponyville might not even have anesthesia right now. Thinking of this made Comet Flash tremble even more. However, the Cosmic Princess did not give him much time to think. In just a moment, she was standing right in front of Comet Flash. Woo-woo. Looking at the helpless little pony crying in front of her, the Cosmic Princess suddenly felt a wave of guilt deep in her heart. After all, even she could tell that she might have gone a bit too far with her earlier antics. Seeing the current situation, the Cosmic Princess couldn't help but feel a bit awkward. After all, she really didn't have much experience in comforting children. Even the previous student, Twilight Sparkle, had mostly just taught her magic. "Let's help him heal first," she thought as she slowly reached out her hoof toward Comet Flash. The trembling Comet Flash suddenly felt a warm current flowing down from above, and the dull pain in his head seemed to vanish. The imagined attack did not come. Instead, a hoof gently stroked his mane. When he opened his eyes, he saw the Cosmic Princess with a somewhat awkward royal smile. "I'm sorry, child. I just haven't interacted with others like this in so long that I couldn't help myself. Can you forgive me?" Looking at the seemingly flustered Cosmic Princess in front of him, the sense of oppression that Comet Flash had felt from her earlier completely disappeared. In fact, seeing the strange smile on her face, Comet Flash couldn't help but laugh. After all, her smile was almost identical to Twilight's smile. proving that they were indeed a teacher and student. After calming down, Comet Flash quickly sniffed, wiped away his tears, cleared his throat a couple of times, and said to the Cosmic Princess in front of him, "Ahem, I forgive you." Hearing this, the Cosmic Princess let out a sigh of relief, then revealed a more normal smile as she extended her hoof toward Comet Flash. "Then would you like to be my student?" Comet Flash was thrown into confusion. However, in the end, the Cosmic Princess offered a bunch of generous conditions, especially that she would cover all the materials for his future research from her treasury. Comet Flash still became the Cosmic Princess's student. After all, what researcher could refuse sufficient research funding and a teacher who wouldn't interfere with their research? Moreover, as the Cosmic Princess's student, Comet Flash successfully qualified for entry into the Academy of Gifted Unicorns as a Pegasus. In the following years, with the support of the Cosmic Princess's treasury, Comet Flash conducted a lot of research and development in Ares technology. However, later on, when the Cosmic Princess saw her treasury, she thought it had been robbed, nearly causing her to blow up the entire castle in an attempt to catch the thief. But that is a story for another time. Clearly just a big princess who liked playing pranks, but that kind of expression made it impossible for others to hold a grudge against her. So I will definitely change that terrible ending. Chapter 5. Successful research on the Xingtian armor, a new day in Comet Flash's laboratory. Looking at the red camera nearing completion in front of him, Comet Flash couldn't help but take a deep breath. After all, he had worked hard to achieve this ultimate goal, and now he was just one step away. I hope everything goes smoothly. Comet Flash nervously picked up the transformation device core made from magical gems, pointing it at the center of the camera. Fortunately, there were no errors in the last step of this experiment. With a click, the transformation device core successfully connected to the device. It seemed that the energy was in place, as the screen of the transformation device lit up. Xingtian armor activated. Concealment ended. Contractor confirmed. Comet Flash. Comet Flash suddenly felt a faint connection with the experimental Xingtian armor in front of him, as if the armor had become an extension of his own body. Looking at the camera-shaped Xingtian armor summoner before him, Comet Flash couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. He had spent a lot of resources and energy to study this thing, and he had been covered in soot from explosions time and again, but today he finally succeeded. This was an important guarantee for him to support other ponies in the future. In most cases, sufficient combat power was an important bargaining chip in negotiations with other races. Of course, the most important reason was surely who could resist the temptation of a transformation armor? As Comet Flash muttered to himself, he raised the Xingtian summoner. As the light from the summoner swept over him, a belt suddenly appeared around Comet Flash's waist. Xingtian armor fusion. With the sound of a shudder, several red light shadows converged onto Comet Flash, and a red and white armored suit appeared on him. Wearing the armor, Comet Flash instantly felt filled with power. His speed and reaction ability were enhanced. While it was hard to say about the Cosmic Princess, Comet Flash estimated that he could probably hold his own against Princess Luna right now. Thinking of this made Comet Flash feel a bit regretful. Unfortunately, my current magical energy is still insufficient. Otherwise, if I could upgrade the armor to become the war god Xingtian right now, I could probably sweep through all the main storyline villains. However, Comet Flash quickly laughed off such daydreaming thoughts. After all, it was unrealistic to think about upgrading the armor right after developing it. Next, I should find the Royal Guard and the Lightning Pegasus squad to practice. It would also be a good opportunity to record the actual data of the Xingtian armor. Thinking of this, Comet Flash quickly packed up the data recording machine. However, just as he was about to run off to find the shining armor and Firefly, he suddenly remembered something. The Xingtian armor seems to have a teleportation ability. So why do I need to run over? This is a perfect opportunity to try it out. Teleportation. Having figured it out, Comet Flash immediately got into position. And with a flash of crimson light, his figure vanished from the spot. At that moment, Shining Armor was conducting his daily patrol, looking for various safety issues around the castle. He was observing whether the guards were where they should be while recording the situation. Front gate, no problem. Guards in the corridor, no problem. Suddenly appearing armored pony. What the heck? Suddenly appearing armored pony. Just as he was about to press the emergency button to call for the guards, Comet Flash quickly canceled the armor and said, "Wait, Shining Armor, it's me. I just came to find you for something." Seeing Comet Flash, Shining Armor let out a sigh of relief but then extended his hoof in annoyance to ruffle Comet Flash's mane. "Don't wear that strange armor and teleport around the castle. You almost scared me into pressing the emergency button." Knowing he was in the wrong, Comet Flash could only explain while showing a royal awkward smile, trying to smooth things over. "Hee, I just developed a new achievement and wanted to see if you guys could try it out." As Comet Flicker spoke, He flicked his elbow against the shining armor and smiled mysteriously at him, saying, "And I have results. Being the first to come find you just shows how good our relationship is." Looking at this guy who was mostly mature, but sometimes inexplicably childish, Shining Armor could only sigh helplessly. After all, he wasn't wrong. To be precise, this guy had a good relationship with almost everyone. After seeing the summoning device in Comet Flicker's hand, Shining Armor thought for a moment and said, "So your new result is that complete set of armor? You finished it so quickly? Well, how do you want us to cooperate with you for testing?" "It's simple. This time, I mainly want to test the armor's stats. So you just need to bring a squad of Royal Guards wearing standard light armor to the newly built combat arena." "Combat training? Got it." Realizing this was a good opportunity for practical training, Shining Armor immediately agreed and began to think about which guards to bring. After their communication concluded, Comet Flicker summoned the celestial armor again, but just before teleporting away, he seemed to remember something and added, "By the way, I also need to notify the Lightning Pegasus team members, so remember to prepare for cooperative combat." With that, a flash of red light appeared, and Comet Flicker disappeared from the spot. Still need to consider cooperative training? Shining Armor was left alone, silently pondering which members to bring along. Lightning Pegasus training ground with a flash of red light. Comet Flicker suddenly appeared in midair. Luckily, he had spread his wings in time to avoid falling. Phew. Teleporting long distances is indeed a bit tiring, and the landing point is harder to control. As he spoke, Comet Flicker looked at Captain Fire Breather in the distance. To avoid any misunderstandings, he decided to remove the celestial armor in advance before flying toward her. When Fire Breather saw Comet Flicker flying toward her, she raised her hoof to adjust her sunglasses and looked at him with curiosity. "Haven't seen you for a while. What research have you been up to?" "Guess." Comet Flicker waved the summoning device in his hand, striking a proud pose with his hooves on his hips. Seeing his demeanor, Fire Breather quickly understood what he meant. "So this is your new research result? You're here for a battle test?" With Fire Breather being so on point, Comet Flicker couldn't help but show a look of approval and patted her shoulder. Fire Breather, seeing this little guy showing off like a child with a new toy, could only shake her head helplessly. Just in time, the Lightning Pegasus team has had quite a few new members recently, and they need a battle to bond. With her agreement, Comet Flicker nodded and added, "All right, we'll meet at the new combat arena. Remember to have them wear standard armor. The Royal Guards will also participate in this practice, so be ready for cooperation." After giving his instructions, he activated the teleportation magic and left. Fire Breather was left pondering his words. He actually wants the Lightning Pegasus team and the Royal Guards to train together? Looks like he's really confident in what he created this time. Chapter 6. Drill soon. Comet Flicker, along with the Lightning Pegasus team and the Royal Guards, gathered at the Royal Combat Arena. However, seeing the pink-purple unicorn beside Shining Armor, Comet Flicker curiously asked, "Shining Armor, why did you bring Princess Melody? Although you two might be in a romantic phase, there's no need to be together all the time, right?" Upon hearing this, both Shining Armor and Princess Melody's faces turned red, and they quickly waved their hooves to explain, "No. I just thought it would be best to have a princess supervise such a large-scale drill, so I asked Melody to come. I didn't have any intention of showing off in front of her." However, realizing he had misspoken, Shining Armor quickly covered his mouth with a hoof. "I didn't say anything." But this feeble explanation clearly couldn't convince the others. The surrounding horses exchanged teasing glances, and Comet Flicker leaned against Shining Armor, joking, "No wonder you're the captain of the Royal Guards who can win the princess's heart. This relationship is truly enviable. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you later." Seeing the teasing expressions around him and Comet Flicker's banter, Shining Armor immediately showed an expression of despair, even letting his mane droop. However, Princess Melody found his reaction amusing. She reached out her hoof to pat Shining Armor's head and comforted him. "It's okay. There's nothing to hide, is there? You don't need to be so downcast. I believe you can do it." Saying this, she nudged Shining Armor's cheek with her nose. Encouraged by Melody, Shining Armor perked up again, standing straight and lifting his mane. Comet Flicker and Fire Breather, watching Shining Armor's transformation, were amazed. Is this the power of love? Looks like Shining Armor will be particularly tough to deal with later. However, this little interlude didn't last long. As Princess Melody flew up to the stands, the Lightning Pegasus team and the Royal Guards had already taken their positions, each donning their standard armor. As several pieces of armor appeared on them, the Royal Guard unicorns sprouted pairs of ethereal wings, while the Lightning Pegasus team members developed ethereal horns. This standard armor not only enhanced their strength and magic, but also enabled the unicorns to fly and allowed the Pegasi to cast magical beams and protective spells. Although they couldn't use it to cast complex spells like Comet Flicker, these enhancements significantly boosted their combat effectiveness. at least allowing the Lightning Pegasus team to avoid constant hand-to-hand combat. However, due to its high cost and the fact that only Comet Flicker could produce it at the moment, this armor could only be equipped by a few elite squads and the Lightning Pegasus team. Feeling the enhanced power after activating the armor, Fire Breather couldn't help but exclaim, "This armor never ceases to amaze me, no matter how many times I try it on." Shining Armor nodded in agreement. After all, as Comet Flicker said, while we continue to train, our potential will also improve. Before reaching the limit, this armor can grow stronger alongside us. If this unrefined armor can achieve such a level, I wonder how powerful the one he wears is. As he spoke, Fire Breather looked at Comet Flicker, who was already holding the summoning device. Seeing them looking at him, Comet Flicker smiled slightly and suddenly inserted the summoning device into his belt. Celestial Armor merge. With the familiar sound echoing, several beams of light flashed, and the familiar armor reappeared on Comet Flicker. Seeing that both sides were ready, Princess Melody raised her hoof high and then swung it down sharply. The drill begins. With Princess Melody's command, Fire Breather charged ahead with several members of the Lightning Pegasus team, rushing toward Comet Flicker. Meanwhile, the other members of the Lightning Pegasus team began firing magical beams at Comet Flicker to restrict his movements. Good coordination. Comet Flicker couldn't help but admire the skilled teamwork of the Lightning Pegasus team members. However, he quickly activated his teleportation ability and vanished from his original spot, leaving Fire Breather and the others swiping at empty air. With a flash of light, Comet Flicker appeared directly behind Fire Breather. Unfortunately, they still weren't enough to deal with him. Fire Judgment Hoof. Comet Flicker struck fiercely with his hoof. Even though Fire Breather barely managed to react in time and activated his shield, he was still sent flying backward by the force of the blow. One down. Just as Comet Flicker prepared to repeat the process to take down the other members of the Lightning Pegasus team, an unexpected pressure suddenly appeared on him, interrupting his movements. The other members of the Lightning Pegasus team seized this opportunity, unleashing several magical beams that struck Comet Flicker. Fire Judgment Wing. Seeing this situation, Comet Flicker hurriedly summoned his weapon to defend against the attack. After inserting the weapon card, the wings attached to his armor suddenly expanded and sharpened, merely creating ripples in response to the magical beams hitting them. At that moment, Comet Flicker realized that the source of the earlier pressure was actually the Royal Guard, which was linked together by magical beams. This was exactly the second function Comet Flicker designed for his armor, as sometimes the individual unicorn's magical power was indeed insufficient to make a significant impact on powerful targets. Therefore, Comet Flicker incorporated a device that could gather magical power into the armor. Although this function required them to unite within a certain range and had some magical transmission loss, it indeed provided a solid enhancement to the magical output against a single target. Even Comet Flicker, who was wearing the Judgment Armor, was suppressed by that attack, forcing him to summon his weapon to confront the incoming assault directly. Have you mastered this technique so quickly? I didn't expect my design function to be my first experimental product. And this time, he was indeed caught off guard because Comet Flicker hadn't anticipated that these two teams, which seemed to have little interaction usually, had already practiced their combination moves in private. Looking at the two teams that had reorganized their formation in front of him, Comet Flicker couldn't help but put away his playful thoughts. After taking a few deep breaths, he assumed a serious combat stance again. After all, if he got too carried away and messed up, it wouldn't be good. On the opposite side, Fire Breather and Shining Armor noticed Comet Flicker getting serious, and their expressions grew more solemn. After all, judging from the earlier situation, the performance of his armor could only be described as exaggerated. Their rehearsed moves could only catch him off guard momentarily, not to mention that he had now summoned a pair of even more exaggerated wings. Chapter 7. A calm routine. Subsequently, Comet Flicker and the two teams fell into a stalemate of back-and-forth exchanges. However, Comet Flicker found an opportunity, delivering a Fire Judgment Hoof that knocked out Shining Armor, and the now leaderless Royal Guard naturally couldn't withstand Comet Flicker's onslaught. In the end, the Lightning Pegasus team, having lost their cover, could only be taken down one by one, and thus, Comet Flicker finally achieved victory. Although both the Royal Guard and the Lightning Pegasus team lost to Comet Flicker, Fire Breather and Shining Armor were in good spirits. Comet Flicker nodded at the gradually recovering Royal Guards and Lightning Pegasus team, satisfied with the performance of both the standard armor and his Judgment Armor. After all, if both sides could bring a few more teams, they might be able to gather enough power for a moonlight strike. As soon as the team members dispersed, Fire Breather immediately approached Comet Flicker and nudged him with her hoof. "Hey, little Comet, the armor you made this time is quite strong. Have you considered making a few more sets for the Lightning Pegasus team?" However, hearing this, Shining Armor, who was enjoying a massage from Melody, raised an objection. After all, Such a powerful and cool armor was hard to resist, and it was 1,000 times more exciting than Dungeons and Dragons. Our Royal Guard should be the ones to update our gear. You know, Comet Flicker used a lot of powerful magic in that last battle, and I think we would be more suited for it. It should go to the Royal Guard. It should go to the Lightning Pegasus team. As the argument escalated, the two captains butted heads, refusing to yield to one another. Meanwhile, Comet Flicker was reminded of the significant portion of the treasury that had been burned in the development of this armor by Princess Cosmos. If I make 2 more sets. Comet Flicker couldn't help but get goosebumps at the thought, knowing that if he dared to deplete his teacher's treasury. Realizing this, Comet Flicker reached out to interrupt the two captains' dispute. Hold on a second, captains. Due to cost issues, this armor may not be feasible for mass production. After thinking for a moment, Comet Flicker added, in fact, even the set I'm wearing still has unresolved issues. Indeed, after experiencing the intense battle earlier, Comet Flicker discovered that the energy supply of the armor had decreased to a certain extent, which was one of the reasons he chose to finish the fight quickly. The magical crystals could not fully solve the armor's energy supply problem. His words immediately dashed the hopes of the two captains regarding the new armor, causing them to sink into despondency. However, it made sense. Such a powerful armor couldn't possibly be mass-produced so easily. But not being able to experience this armor was still disappointing for the ponies. The dejected Shining Armor leaned toward Melody, who was very cooperative and leaned against him. Meanwhile, Fire Breather could only feel disappointed while also having to witness the two ponies' affection. Looking at the two glum ponies, Comet Flicker could only continue. Although this type of armor may not be possible, based on the experience with these armors, once the research funding is approved, I can provide a few sets of captain-level armors for you. Upon hearing that there would be new armor, Fire Breather and Shining Armor instantly perked up. That's great, Comet Flicker. We knew you weren't the type to keep everything to yourself. They cheered excitedly around Comet Flicker, when suddenly Fire Breather thought of a new mischievous idea. She dashed to Comet Flicker's side and lifted him up to throw him into the air. Let's cheer for our cool inventor. 1-2, long live. Shining Armor. Robust and quick to join in the tossing, was soon followed by Melody as well. Comet Flicker, who was being tossed repeatedly, could only smile wryly and ask them to put him down, but it was clear that none of the ponies were listening to him. Meanwhile, Fire Breather rubbed her hooves together and muttered, my student really is impressive. There's been new progress. It seems it's time to pay a visit to his laboratory. Just then, Ziyue, who had accidentally fallen asleep while studying at home, suddenly woke up. Upon awakening, she looked at the pile of magic books waiting for her review and, realizing it had derailed her study plan, Ziyue immediately let out a sharp explosion of sound. Suilong, why didn't you wake me up? The little dragon, who had been sleeping soundly, was also startled awake by Ziyue's sudden outburst. Seeing Ziyue in a frenzy, the poor little dragon could only rub his eyes and say to her, but you've really not rested for several days. Then, he pointed with his claw at the towering stacks of magic books that were even taller than Ziyue herself. I think even if you don't study so hard, you can still pass the task. You need to have confidence in yourself, Ziyue. However, facing Suilong's comfort, Ziyue's frustration did not lessen at all. She was seen frantically rubbing her mane into a tangled mess. No, you don't understand, Suilong. You don't understand how important this task assigned by the Cosmic Princess is to me. This could be a major assessment from the Cosmic Princess. And Comet Flash will be with me. If I can't pass the Cosmic Princess's assessment, I won't be able to learn more knowledge with Comet Flash. Everyone will just think I'm a useless unicorn. As she spoke, Ziyue suddenly stood up as if she had thought of something terrifying. With that, she plunged back into the ocean of study. Suilong, watching Ziyue immerse herself in her own world again, could only sigh and shake his head helplessly. What a blind little pony. Is this what love is? Luckily, I haven't fallen in love yet. With that, he went to prepare coffee for Ziyue and called for Shining Armor and Comet Flash to come and help, as he couldn't handle this situation alone. Shortly after, Shining Armor and Comet Flash were summoned over by Suilong's Dragon Flame message. When the two ponies saw that Ziyue hadn't slept for several days, they severely criticized her for not taking care of her health and told her to rest immediately. Although she accused Suilong of being untrustworthy, the smile on her face couldn't deceive anyone. But that's a story for later. Chapter 8. Visit Indeed. Even the highest quality magical crystals can't completely solve the energy supply problem of the Xingtian armor, can they? Comet Flash looked at the Xingtian armor summoner in front of him, feeling somewhat troubled. During yesterday's battle, he discovered the energy supply issue of the Xingtian armor. And in the subsequent tests, he found that even with low-intensity energy output, if his own willpower was sufficient, the Xingtian armor could only maintain for about 6 hours. If engaging in high-intensity combat, the duration could be even shorter. It seems that with the resources of the pony world, Perfectly replicating a flawless Xingtian armor is still a bit too difficult, isn't it? Fortunately, aside from the energy supply, other functions are not problematic. After all, in yesterday's follow-up experiments, Comet Flash did feel that there was more potential contained within the Xingtian armor. The inability to upgrade it now was simply due to his insufficient willpower. Moreover, since ponies inherently possess magic, even when the magic in the crystals is exhausted, they can rely on their own magic for a while. With this thought, Comet Flash felt relieved. So actually, it's enough? I'll leave this problem for my future self to worry about. Now it's time to relax. Completely relaxed, Comet Flash casually placed the Xingtian armor into the laboratory's safe. After all, today is the day Ziyue heads to Ponyville, the beginning of all the plots. How could he miss it? Humming a little tune and bouncing lightly, Comet Flash left the place. The empty laboratory now appeared silent and somewhat eerie, as if foreshadowing the terrible events that might occur next. However, at this moment, Comet Flash, who was humming a song on the road, clearly had no idea what awaited him ahead. He was currently immersed in the long-awaited relaxation time. What? This task really is just to have me patrol Ponyville? Sitting in the royal carriage, Ziyue looked incredulously at Comet Flash beside her. Don't worry. The teacher isn't one to randomly assess ponies. She just has a bit of a mischievous streak sometimes. This time she really just wants you to patrol Ponyville and make a few friends. However, Ziyue still didn't feel reassured, as she suddenly remembered the record she had seen about the Moon Mare. But what about Nightmare Moon? In that legend, the Moon Mare will escape on the 1000th night. And today just happens to be the 1000th night. Just making friends won't save Ponyville. Seeing this situation, Comet Flash could only adopt a serious expression and said to Ziyue, "Don't worry, if the sky falls, there will be tall ones to support it. If the Moon Mare really escapes, the teacher won't ignore it. Besides, Suilong and I will protect you, right?" With that, Comet Flash nudged Suilong beside him, and at that moment, Suilong also reacted and stood on Comet Flash's back, making a serious expression towards Ziyue. "That's right. I, Dragon Knight Suilong, will protect you together with Comet Flash." Seeing the two of them behaving so comically, Ziyue couldn't help but laugh, and her tension eased significantly. She reached out her hoof to hug Suilong and rubbed his head vigorously, smiling as she said, "Then it's up to you, my little Dragon Knight." Comet Flash, glancing at the nearby Ponyville, also reminded, "Get ready. It seems we're almost at Ponyville." At his reminder, both the dragon and the pony looked towards the calm and peaceful town. "It really looks like a nice place. I just hope nothing unexpected happens." Suilong, "Sorry, I couldn't help it." Just as Comet Flash and Ziyue's group had walked a few steps in the hot air balloon, a pink pony suddenly appeared in front of them. Before Ziyue could react, the pink pony bombarded them with a series of questions. "Oh my gosh, are you new friends? Oh no, what am I saying? I've never seen you before. You must be new friends. Oh my gosh, you're even with a dragon baby in Comet Flash. It seems you are his friends. Hello. I'm Pinkie Pie, what's your name?" Watching Ziyue and Suilong, who were somewhat dazed by the barrage, Comet Flash could only speak up to Pinkie Pie, saying, "This is Ziyue and Suilong. It is indeed their first time in Ponyville." "Ah." Then Pinkie Pie seemed to think of something and darted away like an arrow, leaving the two ponies and one dragon in a state of confusion. Seeing this, Ziyue curiously asked Comet Flash, "What a strange pony. Do you know her?" Comet Flash nodded. "Who in Ponyville doesn't know the party pony Pinkie Pie? I was here last time to promote the medical pod I developed, but I won't share more information. You'll find out soon." Looking at Comet Flash, who seemed to know everything but liked to be mysterious, Ziyue felt a bit speechless. However, she quickly let it go. After all, no matter how strange that pony was, could she compare to Nightmare Moon? After this little episode, the group continued on their way. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of Apple Farm. This is the venue for the summer celebration banquet, Sweet Apple Acres. Suilong glanced at the checklist in his hand, looked at the big gate in front of him, and nodded in confirmation. However, just as they walked through the gate of Sweet Apple Acres, a cheerful yaw suddenly rang in their ears. An orange-yellow farm pony swiftly ran past them, then kicked a nearby apple tree with her hoof, causing the apples to fall neatly into the wooden bucket below. Seeing this pony, Ziyue was just about to greet her. "Hello, I'm Pony Ziyue," but before she could finish, the pony suddenly grabbed her hoof and shook it up and down rapidly. "Hello, Ziyue, so nice to meet you. I'm Applejack. How can I help you?" Then she let go of Ziyue's hoof, but it was clear that Ziyue had not yet recovered, still swaying up and down until Suilong pressed her hoof down. And only then did she awkwardly stop. Seeing Ziyue's somewhat awkward appearance, the comet flicker behind quickly came to the rescue. "Applejack, this is my junior sister Ziyue. We are here on the orders of the Cosmic Princess to inspect the preparations for the summer festival. By the way, how is Grandma Smith's leg after the treatment last time?" It's Comet Flicker. Upon hearing this, Applejack seemed to remember something and said to them, since you are here to inspect the preparations for the summer festival, would you like to try some of the food we've prepared and help Ziyue get to know the apple family? Oh, oui. Comet Flicker was about to refuse. But unexpectedly, Ziyue suddenly spoke up. Of course, if it doesn't take too much time, I would also like to meet some friends. As she spoke, Ziyue winked at Comet Flicker, as if waiting for him to praise her for finally taking the initiative. It seems there's no escaping now. Seeing Ziyue like this, Comet Flicker could only shake his head helplessly. Let her experience the warmth of friendship in advance. After all, there's a party waiting for her later. Ziyue, however, tilted her head in confusion at Comet Flicker's expression. Chapter 9. Meeting Applejack was naturally overjoyed when Ziyue agreed, immediately ringing a triangle next to her and shouting loudly towards Sweet Apple Acres, "Gather up for dinner, little ponies." With Applejack's call, a large group of little ponies rushed out from Sweet Apple Acres. At this moment, Ziyue understood why there was such a complicated expression on Comet Flicker's face. But at this point, it was too late to regret. Ziyue, Comet Flicker, and Suilong could only be swept along by the tide of little ponies to the dining table. Applejack began introducing her family members. Let me introduce you to our apple family. Here, we have sweet apple pie, apple bread, apple muffin, and lastly, he is Macintosh, Apple Bloom, and Grandma Smith. Ah, it's Comet Flicker. When Apple Bloom was introduced, she had been waiting for a long time and immediately leaped onto Comet Flicker, looking at him with her big, innocent eyes full of anticipation. Where are we going to adventure today? The valley, the creek, or the everfree forest? Apple Bloom. I'm afraid you can't go anywhere today. You have your studies to complete, so don't trouble Comet Flicker. But soon, Grandma Smith pulled Apple Bloom down. Oh no. Like a dream shattered, Apple Bloom instantly became very dejected, and even the big bow on her head drooped down. Seeing this, Comet Flicker could only reach out and gently rub Apple Bloom's little head, comforting her. All right, Apple Bloom, we'll take you out to play next time. Yay, with the promise. Apple Bloom perked up again. Having settled all this, Comet Flicker turned his gaze back to Ziyue. However, Ziyue clearly had no time to pay attention to these matters, as a bigger challenge awaited her. Because by the time Applejack finished her introductions, the dining table was already piled high with food that was taller than several little ponies. Faced with the eager eyes of the Apple family, Ziyue found it hard to say no. At this moment, she could only cast a pleading look at Comet Flicker. Comet Flicker could only cover his face with his hoof. No need to say anything more, let's eat. After a fierce battle, they managed to finish all the food, and Comet Flicker and the others were back on the street. Although Ziyue didn't overeat like before due to Comet Flicker's help, the strong feeling of fullness still made her feel a bit nauseous. At this moment, Ziyue looked over at Comet Flicker, who appeared completely unfazed. Why didn't you overeat? It seems like you ate more than I did. This isn't scientific. Upon hearing Ziyue's question, Comet Flicker just smiled and ruffled her mane. Silly. I'm not like you, spending all day in the library ignoring my health. I've been exercising all along. A strong little pony can eat more. That's scientific. Oh, fine. Soon they arrived at the next stop. Suilong looked at the checklist in his hoof and said, the banquet inspection is complete. Next is the weather. However, Suilong glanced at the nearby sky, puzzled. According to the plan, there should be a little pony named Rainbow Dash here to clear the skies. Looking at the clouds in the sky, Ziyue couldn't help but shake her head. It seemed she didn't clean up very thoroughly. However, before Ziyue could finish her sentence, a blue figure flew towards Comet Flicker. Look at my sneak attack. You were too careless, Comet Flicker. But knowing Rainbow Dash well, Comet Flicker was prepared. He simply turned around and caught Rainbow Dash with a hoof, then used another hoof to neutralize her momentum. Rainbow Dash, who was caught, couldn't help but applaud his impressive move. That was so cool. Even if you're not as cool as me, you're only 20 points behind. Miss Rainbow Dash, you should explain the sky you're responsible for first. Ziyue also looked at Rainbow Dash with a scrutinizing gaze. Seeing the two of them, Rainbow Dash waved her hoof helplessly. Oh, don't be so boring. I can clear this sky in less than 10 seconds. Right now, it's more important for me to practice with the Wonder Bolts. Watching the somewhat lazy Rainbow Dash, Ziyue suddenly got an idea. She said to Rainbow Dash, come on, bragging little pony, just talking big won't get you into the Wonder Bolts. This provocation clearly had a great effect on Rainbow Dash. Upon hearing this, she immediately became serious. Who's bragging? Just watch me. With that, Rainbow Dash rapidly flapped her wings and instantly turned into a blue shooting star, clearing the entire sky of clouds in a flash. Even Ziyue couldn't help but be a bit surprised at this scene. However, she quickly composed herself and said to Rainbow Dash, your speed is indeed quite good, but you're still a bit behind Comet Flicker. Alright, I may indeed be a bit behind him now, but I'll catch up soon. With that, Rainbow Dash zipped away, not forgetting to throw down a challenge before leaving. Remember to have a race with me at the festival. This left Comet Flicker and Ziyue exchanging glances again. However, Suelong looked at all this with satisfaction and marked a check on the weather item on the checklist. Looks like we've sorted out another item. Next, we should go check the decorations at the venue. Looking around at the already well-prepared decorations, Ziyue nodded. It seems like the preparations here are pretty good. Don't you think, Suelong? Yeah, it's really beautiful. Upon hearing this, Ziyue also glanced around a few times. Yes, the decorations here are quite pretty. But Suelong shook his head, his eyes filled with love, and even little heart-shaped bubbles began to appear above his head. No, I'm not talking about the decorations. I'm talking about her. Following Suelong's gaze, a white little pony came into view. At that moment, this beautiful little pony was troubled by a ribbon. This one doesn't fit. This one doesn't fit either. At this moment, Suelong had floated to her side. This beautiful lady. I think this color might be more suitable, he said. At that moment, Jinchi finally noticed Suelong beside her, as well as the red ribbon in his hand. Oh my. We really need a bit of warm color here. Thank you, our lovely little dragon baby. Saying this, Jinchi patted Suelong's head, which made him even more enchanted. Oh my, she is truly beautiful and gentle. However, just as Suelong wanted to follow her, Ziyue picked him up and tossed him onto her back. All right, it's time to wake up. Our little love saint. We still have inspection tasks to complete. No, at least let me ask her name first. But Ziyue didn't give him that chance and directly took the dragon baby away. All that was left was Suelong's reluctant exclamations. Chapter 10, Darkness Will Rise. Nightmares Invade. 1. As Suelong was being taken away, he was still a bit distracted, and Comet Sparkle, seeing his state, just smiled and ruffled his head. All right, our little love saint, her name is Jinchi. How about I introduce you to her once we're done with our tasks? Really? Upon hearing this, Suelong suddenly perked up and jumped from Ziyue's back to Comet Sparkle's side. As if I've ever lied to you, little guy. Comet Sparkle couldn't help but tap the little dragon baby, who was so enamored with Jinchi. However, Suelong didn't mind at all. His heart was already filled with fantasies about meeting Jinchi in the future. Oh, I knew Comet Sparkle. You treat me the best. Seeing Suelong like this, Ziyue couldn't help but tease. Does that mean I don't treat Suelong well? You're going to make me very sad. Upon hearing this, Suelong quickly retorted, No way, Ziyue. You treat me well too. It's just. Looking at the flustered little dragon in front of her, Ziyue reached out her guilty hoof to rub his face again. Haha. Alright, I know little Suelong cares about me too, you just don't know how to express it, right? That's right, just like you said, Ziyue. Suelong, who was relieved, put on a cute expression as if he couldn't believe she guessed it correctly. Alright, let's head to the next and final piece of music. Comet Sparkle's group quickly arrived at the edge of the forest. As they pushed through the grass, they saw a pale yellow flying horse teaching little birds to rehearse songs. However, Ziyue's loud voice scared all the little birds away, even making Ro too frightened to make a sound. Fortunately, Suelong and Comet Sparkle's timely arrival allowed both sides to get to know each other. Though Ro kept circling around Suelong asking questions. After finishing all their inspections, Comet Sparkle, Ziyue, and the following Ro finally reached their last destination for the day, the town's library. Just as Ziyue pushed the door open and slowly walked into the dark library. Surprise! The lights suddenly turned on, and Beaky, who had been waiting for a long time, set off a cannon. After setting off the cannon, Beaky directly pulled Ziyue to the center of the party. Confused by all this, Ziyue hazily joined in the celebration. Then they saw her having a great time with the other little ponies she met that day, even pulling Suelong into the games. However, Ziyue, who seemed to be a bit unlucky, still couldn't escape the curse of the chili sauce, inevitably transforming into a little fire pony. Everyone laughed at this scene, especially Suelong, who was laughing so hard he almost couldn't stand up. However, Comet Sparkle, watching this joyful scene, suddenly felt an ominous premonition arise in his heart. Clearly, if things went according to the original story, there shouldn't be any problems. Yet even with that thought, Comet Sparkle's unease did not dissipate. At this moment, Comet Sparkle tidied up the gear he was carrying and noticed the communicator he always had with him. After hesitating for a moment, he dialed the number for Shining Armor. Hello, is this Shining Armor? Just in case, you and the Lightning Bolt team should bring a few more squads over. It's to prevent the Nightmare Moon's invasion. He hoped they would arrive in time, as Comet Sparkle anxiously watched the shadow of the moon gradually disappearing outside the window. In this joyful atmosphere, time flew by, and Comet Sparkle, having taken a break, organized his gear and distributed the simple armor he had prepared as gifts for them to Ziyue and the other ponies. As time passed, All the little ponies gradually gathered in the hall, and the welcome ceremony prepared for the cosmic princess was ready. All the ponies excitedly anticipated the moment of the celebration, especially Beaky, who was bouncing next to Ziyue, almost as if she would bounce to the ceiling at any moment. As the time and preparations were almost complete, the mayor of the town, under the spotlight, cleared her throat and began to read the speech she had prepared. With that, the mayor pointed to the stands of the hall amidst the cheers of the ponies. Next, let us welcome our great cosmic princess to Ponyville. However, as Jinchi opened the curtain, the stands were empty. Instead, in the dark aisle, a pair of crimson eyes suddenly lit up. Be careful. At the sight of those eyes, Comet Sparkle's unease peaked, and sensing that something was wrong, he loudly warned Jinchi on stage. But before Jinchi could react, Nightmare Moon stepped out of the shadows and shot a magical beam towards Jinchi. Fortunately, Comet Sparkle, who was already prepared, dashed forward and threw Jinchi aside, then unfolded a magical shield to block the attack. However, even so, Comet Sparkle was still knocked back by the magical beam, sustaining several abrasions from the residual magic. One can only imagine what would have happened if that attack had hit Jinchi directly, feeling his horn, which seemed to be overheating from taking the hit. Comet Sparkle couldn't help but click his tongue. This Nightmare Moon was much stronger than he had imagined, and even more cruel and terrifying than in the original story. Even her armor appeared heavier and more menacing. Even Comet Sparkle, no matter how dull he was, could now confirm that this was not the timeline of the original story. Seeing that her attack had not worked, Nightmare Moon did not continue to attack. She ignored the ponies below as if they were just a few insignificant bugs. Ponies, there will be no more daylight. I will rule you from now on. That cold, merciless voice frightened countless timid ponies into silence. Seeing this, Comet Sparkle immediately blocked the guards and Rainbow Dash who wanted to confront Nightmare Moon. He fixed his gaze on Nightmare Moon above and calmly said to the ponies behind him, "Don't be impulsive. You all take everyone and escape. The source of harmony that can defeat Nightmare Moon is in the old castle. The source of harmony is already in your bag, Ziyue. But what about you? I naturally have a way to hold off Nightmare Moon. I brought enough inventions this time." At this moment, Ziyue wanted to say something. But Nightmare Moon on stage seemed to have grown tired of the situation and waved her hoof, summoning countless black mists. What a boring play. Since you choose not to submit, then perish under my hooves. Come forth, my loyal night steeds. As the voice of Nightmare Moon fell, the black mist transformed into countless fierce night steeds, rushing towards the other horses. Seeing this, Comet Flash could only concentrate most of her magic at the tip of her horn, unleashing a massive magical shockwave that sent all the night steeds flying. There was no time to waste. Only you can obtain the source of harmony. Hurry. Despite her reluctance, Ziyue gritted her teeth and ran alongside Beaky and the others along the path opened by Comet Flash, heading towards the Eternal Freedom Forest. She knew this was the only way. If she insisted on staying, it would only waste her magic pointlessly, and aside from Comet Flash, no one else here was qualified to face Nightmare Moon. Ziyue could only blame herself for not working harder before, as she set off towards the last hope. Nightmare Moon, watching this little horse that had knocked down so many night steeds in one strike, felt a bit of interest. After all, there were not many who dared to stay after witnessing her power. Such a brave little horse, but I wonder how much weight you really carry. Besides, do you think I have no army of night steeds outside? They can't escape. Comet Flash, on the other hand, was staring intently at Nightmare Moon on the platform. I have confidence in them. If you want to know how much weight I carry, then come and try it yourself. Chapter 11. Darkness Will Rise. Nightmare Invasion, Part 2. Arrogant little one, let me see if your strength matches your bravado. With a wave of her hoof, Nightmare Moon summoned several night steeds that had been lurking nearby, revealing their sharp teeth as they lunged at Comet Flash. However, before they could get close, Comet Flash fired several magical beams that scattered them into black mist. After clearing these foes, Comet Flash turned her attention back to Nightmare Moon on the platform. Is this all you've got? I haven't even warmed up yet. Nightmare Moon, seeing this creature crazily provoking her, knew very well that it was buying time for the other horses outside. But the dignity of the princess made her narrow her eyes at this creature. How arrogant. With that, Nightmare Moon dismissed the surrounding night steeds and suddenly appeared behind Comet Flash, striking out with a powerful hoof. Comet Flash, who was already prepared, flapped her wings to narrowly evade the blow. As she dodged to the side, she couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat at the sight before her. Under Nightmare Moon's hoof, the ground instantly erupted with a wide crack, and the hall began to tremble precariously from the impact. If that had hit me, I'd probably be in pieces by now. I hope Ziyue and the others can obtain the source of harmony quickly, or that the shining armor's support arrives soon. At this moment, Nightmare Moon slowly wiped her hoof. It seems you aren't as brave as you claimed, but how many more times can you dodge? While Comet Flash and Nightmare Moon were locked in battle, the situation in Ponyville was not optimistic. Even without Nightmare Moon's participation, the countless night steeds emerging from unknown corners were causing Ziyue and the others endless trouble. Fortunately, the townsfolk had all come to the summer celebration, allowing Ziyue and the others to barely protect the remaining ponies, but now they couldn't leave the town to search for the source of harmony. If they abandoned the townsfolk, it wouldn't be long before the endless army of night steeds tore every pony apart. Just how many of them are there? Even after taking down so many, their numbers still seem countless. As Rainbow Dash flew in the sky, once again swinging the light blade Comet Flash had given her to slash through the approaching night steeds, she couldn't help but start to complain. With that, she lifted a rock and sent several night steeds flying again. At that moment, several night steeds attempted to rush past the defenses while they were distracted. But Beaky appeared out of nowhere, swinging her spring-loaded punches to take down those foes. At the same time, she launched several clumps of sticky cake that stuck to a few larger night steeds. However, compared to Applejack and Rainbow Dash, Beaky was clearly more optimistic. She even had time to lick the cake stuck to her enemies. I don't know how many there are, but I think support should be arriving soon. I'm not sure, but that is what the script says. As she spoke, Beaky pulled out a book and glanced at it, nodding as if confirming something. Next to her, Rarity was once again complaining while holding her forehead. Oh my gosh, whoever they are, I hope they arrive soon. After fighting for so long, my makeup and hairstyle are all messed up. Oh my gosh, these night steeds are simply hideous. Yet even at this moment, she didn't stop her actions. As several sharp, beautiful flying darts pierced the weaknesses of several night steeds, scattering them into black mist once more. Oh my gosh, Mr. Bear, little birds. You all need to be careful, and Angel, don't rush so far ahead. Meanwhile, Fluttershy was continuously directing her animal friends. At this moment, Fluttershy looked up at the sky again. I hope the support arrives soon. If this continues, the animals and everyone will get hurt. Meanwhile, the hardest working Rainbow Dash was feeling that even flapping her wings was becoming difficult. How long until support arrives? At this rate, we'll be turned into pony jerky before they get here. Hearing Rainbow Dash's words, Rarity covered her face in fear and said, oh my gosh, pony jerky. I don't want to become pony jerky. That would be so ugly. Just then, a massive night steed seemed to target a moment when several ponies were distracted, suddenly flapping its bat-like wings and lunging at Rainbow Dash. At this moment, the already exhausted Rainbow Dash couldn't dodge and could only watch as the terrifying, snarling bat pony opened its mouth to bite her. No, Rainbow Dash. Applejack rushed out, wanting to knock the creature away, but there was no time left. Don't. Watching the creature get closer, Rainbow Dash suddenly thrust her light blade at it. Don't think you can eat me so easily, you bastard. Just at that critical moment, the massive night steed before Rainbow Dash was blasted apart by a sudden magical beam. Several figures dressed in blue swooped in and caught the falling Rainbow Dash. The leader, Spitfire, lifted her goggles and looked at the Rainbow Dash in her arms. Sorry, brave little ones, we're late. The Wonderbolts. I. But it was clear that Rainbow Dash, seeing her idol, was too excited and couldn't get any words out. Watching the Wonderbolts members flying in, Ziyue finally revealed a slight smile of relief. However, she quickly remembered something and turned to the other ponies behind her. Girls, I'm afraid we can't relax yet. We still need to go to the Eternal Freedom Forest to obtain the source of harmony. Will you accompany me? What are you talking about? Ziyue. We will stick to you like candy apples cling to apples, so don't think about going on an adventure alone. What are you talking about? Dear, we will definitely accompany you. Let's head towards the Eternal Freedom Forest. I will come to help too. Count me in. How can such a cool adventure miss the great adventurer Yunbao? Applejack, Jinshi, Beaky, Ro, even Yunbao, who was being hugged by the fire-breathing creature, slowly descended. They all stood behind Ziyue together. We have never had a habit of abandoning our friends. Ziyue looked at her friends behind her, and tears streamed down her face. At this moment, she finally understood the true meaning of friendship. Thank you, my friends. Then let's move forward together. Chapter 12. Darkness Will Rise. Nightmares Descend. Part 3. After casually tossing aside a bloody wing, the Nightmare Moon gently licked the blood off her hoof, looking at the already battered Comet Shimmer, and couldn't help but feel a bit of sympathy. She then looked at Comet Shimmer with a mocking tone. But now, can a wingless bug still hide a few more times? This situation is quite dire. Comet Shimmer, gasping for breath, felt the pain from the broken wing and hoof, which made him grit his teeth. At this moment, he had not only lost all his inventions, but also had one hoof and wing broken due to a moment of carelessness from this guy in front of him. His body covered in countless wounds, both large and small. Yet, Nightmare Moon still appeared as carefree as a cat playing with a mouse. Seeing that Comet Shimmer seemed to have lost his will to resist, Nightmare Moon felt a bit bored. She slowly raised her hoof. Just when I was getting a bit tired of playing, the next strike will be the final one. Comet Shimmer could only watch as Nightmare Moon's hoof drew closer. In this moment of life and death, Comet Shimmer suddenly felt an unexpected calm in his heart. A mysterious connection suddenly established between him and the Xingtian armor, and the cute emblem on his back began to flicker. At the same time, as a red wormhole opened, the Xingtian armor summoner appeared on his hoof again. At this moment, Comet Shimmer finally revealed a smile again. It's too early to give up. Xingtian armor. Combine. Bang. Under Nightmare Moon's strike, countless smoke and debris spread out. However, to her surprise, there was no familiar sensation of flesh tearing beneath her hoof. Instead, a hoof clad in armor blocked her strike. The blue-masked armor suddenly flashed with a streak of light in its eyes. Then its momentum erupted violently, actually pushing Nightmare Moon back. Looking at this unfamiliar armored pony in front of her, Nightmare Moon couldn't help but feel a renewed interest. Oh, interesting. Is this your last desperate struggle? No, just the opposite. Nightmare Moon, clad in armor, Comet Shimmer forcefully adjusted his hoof and stood firmly on the ground again. His gaze towards Nightmare Moon was more resolute than ever. This armor represents the proclamation of your destined failure. Hearing his arrogant words, Nightmare Moon couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. Is that so? If you think you can do it just by wearing some nonsensical armor, then give it a try. Then let's try it. Fire Execution Hoof. As their magic erupted again, the two figures clashed once more. However, unlike before, Comet Shimmer did not retreat a single step this time, but stood firm against Nightmare Moon. How is this possible? A bug like you. Looking at the increasingly ferocious expression on Nightmare Moon's face, although pain radiated from all over his body, Comet Shimmer felt as if he were enjoying a giant tub of ice cream in the middle of summer. What's wrong, Nightmare Moon? Is this all you can do after losing your power to overpower others? Saying this, they both swung their hooves again, creating distance between them. Comet Shimmer then took out the Fire Execution Wing card and inserted it into his belt, channeling his energy. Fire Execution Wing. Fire Wing Technique. Then Comet Shimmer transformed into a red meteor, continuously launching attacks towards Nightmare Moon. After all, even now that he was wearing the Xingtian armor, if he were to face Nightmare Moon head-on, he probably wouldn't be her match. They say that darkening strengthens threefold. This guy's battle power after darkening is at least 2.5 moons. So the only possibility of victory is to use speed to keep her at bay. I don't know where the teacher was sealed by her. If the teacher could come to help, that would be great. But this isn't the time to think about that. Looking at how this combo only left a few small dents on Nightmare Moon's armor, Comet Shimmer felt a bit helpless. He could only hope Ziyue and the others would arrive soon. Apple Gyre, who was visiting for the first time, looked around at the scenery of the Eternal Freedom Forest. So this is the Eternal Freedom Forest? It really is quite eerie. I heard everything here grows on its own. However, Yunbao waved her hoof dismissively. Come on. No matter how eerie it is here, can it be scarier than that group of bat ponies we encountered before? That's right. Girls, there's no time to be scared. We need to hurry to the old princess's castle. Saying this, Ziyue closed the Harmony source guide in front of her and began to lead everyone deeper into the forest. In their hurry, they didn't notice the flash of red light in the bushes by the roadside. Oh my, I feel like something is watching me. As they walked, Jinshi suddenly stopped as if sensing something. She rubbed her hooves together and looked at Ziyue and the others. Could it be those ugly creatures have followed us? Hearing Jinshi's words, Ziyue also began to look around. No way. No, we can't let our guard down. Jinshi, doesn't your armor have a scanning system? Since that thing can scan the enemy's weaknesses, it should also be able to find hidden monsters. Hearing this, Jinshi couldn't help but knock her head. Right. I actually forgot it could do that. Thanks for the reminder, dear. However, when Jinshi activated the scanning system on her armor, the scene before her scared her enough to take 2 steps back. Now there's good news and bad news. The good news is that I was right. So what's the bad news? The other ponies also became tense, leaning against each other. The bad news is that these guys seem to have surrounded us. As Jinshi's words fell, several ferocious creatures pushed through the grass in front of them and slowly walked out, surrounding Ziyue and the others. The black mist emanating from their bodies and their crimson eyes indicated that they had all been controlled by nightmares, becoming even more brutal and terrifying monsters. Ziyue looked at these creatures and couldn't help but frown. This is not good. Biki, try to control them. We don't have much time to waste with them here. I'm already trying, but it seems the black mist on them can block something. My cakes can't stick to them, and they want to even eat the cakes. This shouldn't be happening. Beaky looked at these creatures who walked out of her cakes without a second thought, and couldn't help but scream. Moreover, the black mist on these creatures seems to be able to negate magic. Seeing that the sleep spell had no effect on them, Ziyue furrowed her brows. However, upon seeing this, Yunbao became eager to try. It seems this should be left to me. How about everyone lets me give it a shot first? Just as Ziyue and the others were preparing for a frontal assault, Ro suddenly stepped forward. Chapter 13, Darkness Will Rise. Nightmares Descend, Part 4. Seeing the puzzled expressions on the other little ponies, Ro quickly explained. It seems my armor can sense that they still have consciousness inside. Let me give it a try. However, as she spoke, her voice grew smaller, as if she might shrink back at any moment. After exchanging glances, Ziyue and the others decided to trust their friend. You try it. Ro, don't feel pressured. They then looked toward the creatures that were restless, as if they would pounce at any moment. Come on, girls, let's suppress these guys to buy Ro some time. Before she finished speaking, Applejack threw out a rope, ensnaring one of the scorpion-tailed lions. Yeehaw, it's my specialty to subdue these crazy animals. Beside her, Yunbao was not to be outdone, kicking several wooden wolves into pieces. Don't think you can outdo me, Applejack, I'm the fastest. Meanwhile, a chimera was preparing to unleash its powers against them, but a sudden cupcake landed on its head, interrupting its spell. Sir, ambushing is not a good habit. It's not your time to turn everyone to stone yet. Just stay put for now. With that, Pinky pulled out a bunch of ribbons and tightly bound it, even tasting the cake on its head. Yummy, it's strawberry flavor. Nearby, Jinchi was facing off against a swamp monster, warning the blob-like creature with her hooves. All right, you ugly thing. Stay right there, and don't come any closer to my friends. However, the swamp monster didn't seem to care and spat a glob of mud at Jinchi. Coincidentally, the stinking mud splattered right onto her favorite skirt armor. Upon realizing this, Jinchi's face turned beet red in an instant, and even the magic output from her horn intensified. You dare do this. That's my favorite part. You've really annoyed me. Countless leaves were woven into gigantic fabric under Jinchi's control, instantly binding the swamp monster tightly. Then, she kicked it away with a powerful hoof, leaving Applejack stunned. Wow, I didn't know Jinchi was this strong. Indeed, Yunbao agreed. On the other hand, Ziyue took a more straightforward approach, deciding that if magic wasn't effective, she could just use magic to manipulate stones to pin them down. This was a method taught to her by Comet Sparkle before. At this moment, Ro was slowly approaching a smaller scorpion-tailed lion. Angel and the other little animals were firmly holding it down to prevent it from harming Ro. I'm very sorry, sir. Although I know you might not be comfortable with this, there's no other way. If you still have consciousness, could you tell us the weakness of the black mist on you? Thank you very much. However, the scorpion-tailed lion clearly didn't want to cooperate. As Ro got closer, it almost lunged at her with its long neck, but thankfully, Angel stepped on its head just in time. Oh, sir. At that moment, Ro was about to continue persuading it when she suddenly sensed that it had no intention of repenting and even seemed to revel in their predicament. My friends are wasting precious time trying not to hurt these creatures, and this guy is enjoying it. With that thought, a surge of unnamed anger rose in Ro's heart, driving her to slap the scorpion-tailed lion across the face with a hoof, then forcibly adjusting its head to face her, locking her gaze onto it. If you still have consciousness, I command you to immediately tell me everything you know, or my friends, and I will feed you all to that damn nightmare. Now, immediately, seeing Ro's forceful demeanor and feeling the pain on its face, the scorpion-tailed lion's eyes suddenly cleared up, and even the red glow in its eyes and the black mist surrounding it faded significantly. Feeling Ro's seriousness at that moment, the scorpion-tailed lion instantly revealed everything, including that the force controlling them was the nightmare power behind their necks. After Ro broke it, the nightmare power on it indeed dissipated. Friends, the weakness of these creatures is the strand of nightmare power behind their necks. As long as we break that, they can return to normal. Saying this, Ro seemed to feel she had been too harsh earlier and gently patted the scorpion-tailed lion's head. Sorry, sir. I was a bit rough earlier, but I hope you understand. If you need, I'll bring some cookies next time to make it up to you. However, feeling a bit embarrassed about her earlier actions, the animals quickly left. Even the chimera with the cake on its head hopped away, leaving only the wooden wolves pinned under stones by Ziyue. Watching them leave, Ro could only quietly say, I really hope this didn't cause Mr. Scorpion-tailed lion too much psychological harm. Seeing that the situation was resolved smoothly, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief, and Ziyue called her friends again. All right, no time to rest. Let us move on, girls. But they hadn't gone far when a rushing river blocked their path. In the river, a sea dragon bound by thick, dark chains and covered in wounds immediately caught their attention. It seemed that this creature had exhausted its strength and struggling. And even upon seeing the little ponies approach, it only glanced at them briefly, as if it had lost the will to survive. Are you okay? Seeing the dire condition of the creature, Roro couldn't help but ask. I wouldn't exactly call this okay. To be precise, I'm about to be painfully corroded by these things. Look, they are eating away at my scales. I didn't do anything today. It suddenly got tangled up with this stuff. As the sea dragon spoke, it glanced at Ziyue and the others, kindly warning. So you cute little ponies better not touch this thing lightly, or your hooves will get corroded too. With that, it lowered its head again, not saying more. Indeed, looking at the pitted scales on the sea dragon, it was clear that the black chains had strong corrosive properties and seemed to have high resistance to magic. Ziyue, having shot several magic beams that were deflected again, shook her head helplessly. At this moment, Roro began to spin in circles anxiously. But we can't just leave this gentleman behind. He might die? Just then, Jinshi suddenly seemed to have an idea and looked at the few flying shuttles in her armor. Chapter 14. Darkness will rise, nightmares will descend. Part 5. Oh, my beautiful flying darts, it's a pity that you could only accompany me for such a short time. Though I am very reluctant. Jinshi gritted her teeth and controlled several flying darts to suddenly fly out, starting to cut the chains binding the sea dragon. As the darts met the chains, they unsurprisingly emitted a sizzling sound that represented corrosion, but under the cutting of the darts, the chains also began to show gaps. Meanwhile, Jinshi bit down hard on her handkerchief, desperately trying to suppress her feeling of heartache. The sea dragon, upon seeing this, jumped up joyfully. I'm free. Then he looked at Jinshi, who seemed a bit downcast, and after hesitating for a moment, he pulled off one of his few intact dragon scales and handed it to her. I'm very sorry, this generous and beautiful little pony. I hope my scale can slightly make up for your loss. After Jinshi accepted the scale, the sea dragon turned to the other ponies and waved his paw. Little ponies, if you want to cross the river, let me take you across. Yay. Thus, with the sea dragon's help, they safely passed this checkpoint and continued on their journey. Along the way, they encountered valleys, cliffs, and the shadowy Pegasus team that tempted their hearts. However, with Applejack's super strength, Rainbow Dash's super speed, and their loyalty to their friends, Ziyue and the others ultimately passed these challenges without incident and successfully arrived at the old castle of the two princesses. Finally arrived. According to the guide of the Source of Harmony, the Source of Harmony should be in the castle right in front of them. Saying this, Ziyue closed the book in front of her, exchanged glances with her friends beside her, and then directly pushed open the large door and stepped into the castle. However, when they reached the hall, they did not see the complete Source of Harmony as they had imagined. What greeted their eyes was only a floor full of fragments. Seeing this scene, Jinshi couldn't help but scream in shock. What? That guy Nightmare Moon actually destroyed the Source of Harmony in advance. Rainbow Dash rolled up her sleeves, began to swing her fists and feet at the air, and said fiercely. However, at this moment, Ziyue appeared extraordinarily calm. She slowly walked forward, placed her hoof on the fragments, and began to attempt to sense the magic deep within. The Source of Harmony, representing kindness, loyalty, generosity, optimism, and honesty, would be born under a spark of fire. I understand. The true Source of Harmony is not limited to these stones. The true Source of Harmony comes from the harmonious spirit we represent. The gentle source of kindness, Applejack's source of honesty, Pinkie Pie's source of optimism, Jinshi's source of generosity, Rainbow Dash's source of loyalty, and my source of magic. As the fog in Ziyue's heart gradually cleared, her companions and the fragments of the Source of Harmony on the ground also began to float up, emitting dazzling light. As the corresponding Source of Harmony manifested on the ponies one by one, with a flash of light, Ziyue finally birthed the last piece. The crown representing the source of magic. Nightmare Moon would absolutely never be able to destroy these things. Now, Ziyue looked back at her friends, who had been smiling and supporting her. It's time to rescue Comet Flash and defeat Nightmare Moon. Let's go? Saying this, everyone suddenly pressed the emergency teleportation button on their bodies, and with flashes of light, they disappeared from their original location. On the other side, Comet Flash was once again sent flying by Nightmare Moon. If it weren't for the protection of his armor, Comet Flash might have been finished with this blow, as he had already been severely injured, and even his transformed state was not in good shape. Looking at the nearly depleted energy bar on the panel in front of him, and then at the Nightmare Moon, who was about to launch another attack, Comet Flash prepared himself to fight desperately. However, at that moment, Comet Flash suddenly sensed a familiar magic and several beams of light representing teleportation lit up around him. A familiar lavender-colored pony appeared before him. Seeing the source of harmony they carried, Comet Flash finally breathed a sigh of relief. You finally made it. Then he supported himself to stand up again, looking at Nightmare Moon across from him. Now, it's time for you to accept your destined fate of failure. This is impossible. I clearly destroyed those things. No, Nightmare Moon, the source of harmony cannot be destroyed by evil beings like you, because it represents the harmonious spirit within us. Saying this, Ziyue and the others floated fiercely, and the source of harmony on their bodies began to shine. Then a thick rainbow suddenly condensed from them, shooting towards Nightmare Moon. No. Under the wash of the rainbow cannon, the armor on Nightmare Moon shattered, revealing the Moon Princess inside. But at that moment, a sudden change occurred. Countless scattered nightmare powers surged in. The armor fragments, which should have completely dissipated, reassembled under their influence, transforming into a pony formed purely from nightmares. It looked at the exhausted ponies in front of it and laughed triumphantly. I won't be defeated so easily. Even without that Moon Princess, it's the same. And now you guys can't use the source of harmony again in a short time. Ha 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 ha. Ziyue and the others quickly tried again. But their weary bodies really couldn't muster even a bit of strength. At this moment, Comet Flash suddenly spoke up. It's okay, Ziyue, you've done very well. Leave the rest to me. This monster made purely of will is no match for me. After reassuring Ziyue and the others, Comet Flash silently looked at the crazed nightmare in front of him and took a deep breath. Then he slowly said, I told you. From the moment I got the armor, your fate of failure was already sealed. Saying this, Comet Flash slowly assumed a stance. The earthly and heavenly magnetic fields centered around him, directly enveloping the nightmare polymer in front of him. Heaven and Earth Unbounded, Xingtian's ultimate killing technique. Chapter 15. Darkness will rise, nightmares will descend. Final. Looking at the nightmare, which was suppressed by the earthly and heavenly magnetic fields and unable to move, Comet Flash slowly spoke. You have violated the unforgivable crime of greed in the galactic justice law. I, Xingtian, declare the deprivation of all your rights and will seal and capture you. Surrender. Then he quickly stepped forward and suddenly struck out with a hoof. Heaven and Earth capture. After the strike, Comet Flash summoned the fire execution wings again, transforming into several beams of light that suddenly slashed at the nightmare. Fire wing technique. You bastard. Don't even think about it. In the end, Nightmare wanted to resist, but Comet Flash directly used the last bit of his energy to summon the fire execution horn, then condensed a light cannon and fired. Xingtian light explosion. This blow completely shattered Nightmare's last resistance, turning it directly into a three-dimensional code. Finally, Comet Flash, holding on to his last bit of consciousness, released the earthly and heavenly magnetic field, then brought his hooves together at his waist and collected it. Phew, finally solved it. Now I'm really burnt out. After saying this, Comet Flash lost consciousness, and the armor on him was also released due to his fainting. Fortunately, Ziyue managed to slide in and support him in time, preventing the unconscious Comet Flicker from falling directly to the ground. At that moment, Ziyue noticed the shocking wounds on Comet Flicker's body, especially his severed wing, which was still bleeding. Seeing this, Xinchi gasped in shock. Oh my gosh, how could he be hurt so badly? Feeling the warmth spreading in her arms, Ziyue panicked even more. What should I do at this time? I haven't read about this in any book. What to do? At a loss. She could only press her hooves against Comet Flicker's wounds while searching for something to stop the bleeding. At that moment, the Shining Armor and Fire Breather, who were outside protecting the crowd, finally brought everyone from the town here. Upon seeing Shining Armor, Ziyue's eyes lit up. She immediately used magic to lift Shining Armor and pulled him in front of her. Quick, Shining Armor, do you have any strong healing potions? Hurry. Comet Flicker is about to go. Seeing Ziyue's anxious expression, Shining Armor quickly rummaged through his supply pouch. Found it. Soon, Shining Armor took out a shimmering syringe that emitted a faint green light and injected it into Comet Flicker's neck. With a muffled groan from Comet Flicker, the potion took effect almost instantly, and his complexion improved significantly, with the bleeding stopping. Everyone let out a sigh of relief, as long as his life was saved. Comet Flicker's medical pod could repair any other injuries at any time. At this moment, Comet Flicker finally slowly opened his eyes, but before he could say anything, Ziyue suddenly hugged him tightly. You idiot, why did you push yourself so hard? Seeing you covered in wounds really scared me. Sorry to worry you, Ziyue. Looking at Ziyue, who was softly crying in his arms, Comet Flicker could only shake his head helplessly and began to gently stroke her mane. After crying for a while, Ziyue seemed to feel the curious gazes of others gathering around them. especially her friends who were all curiously leaning in closer. Yunbao even whispered with a mischievous smile to the others, "I didn't expect this bookworm to be unexpectedly bold." Yunbao, hearing this, Ziyue finally reacted and began to shyly wave her hooves, warning the still grinning Yunbao in the sky with a mix of embarrassment and anger. At that moment, Biki suddenly pulled out a giant pair of glasses and put them on, looking at the booklet in her hooves. "By the way, where is Princess Celestia? According to the script, she should be here to raise the sun, right?" Looking around at the still dark night, even Biki couldn't help scratching her head in confusion. Upon hearing Biki's words, the other ponies also felt puzzled. After all, Nightmare had been completely defeated, so why hadn't Princess Celestia come to raise the sun yet? Just then, Princess Luna happened to wake up. Seeing this, Comet Flicker and the others quickly gathered around to check on Princess Luna's condition. "Are you alright? Do you know where Princess Celestia went?" Ruru asked with concern. Upon hearing Ruru's question, the newly awakened and seemingly dazed Princess Luna suddenly remembered something, her expression turning to one of sheer terror. She covered her face with her hooves and screamed in horror, "Oh no, I banished my sister to the moon. Hurry, go save her." However, Ziyue was puzzled by this. "Who is your sister?" "She is Princess Celestia." Upon hearing this news, everyone couldn't help but widen their eyes in disbelief, staring at Princess Luna. "Huh, what?" Unable to accept this information, Ziyue suddenly stood up, her expression one of shock. She began waving her hooves at everyone. "Quick, let's start building a ladder now. We still have time to rescue Princess Celestia from the moon." But with Princess Luna's explanation and Comet Flicker's comfort, Ziyue gradually calmed down. Moreover, with Princess Luna's clarification, everyone finally understood what had happened. It turned out that the first thing Nightmare Moon did when she escaped was to confront Princess Celestia and, taking her by surprise, used immense nightmare magic to banish her to the moon. This was also why Princess Celestia hadn't come to the rescue earlier. So after a lot of commotion, Princess Celestia, who had gotten bored and started plowing the moon with her nose, was finally rescued. However, being a 1,000-year-old alicorn, even though her entrance was not very graceful, she quickly composed herself. The aura she displayed made the other ponies forget about the earlier incident. However, Comet Flicker was not among them, as he had recorded this rare scene with his summoner from the very beginning. Then came the touching reunion between Princess Celestia and Princess Luna, and with Princess Celestia raising the sun, the crisis was finally declared a complete success. After the sun rose, Princess Celestia gently looked at Ziyue and patted her head. "I knew my student wouldn't let me down." Saying this, she playfully winked at Ziyue. "Besides, my student, you wouldn't want to leave your friends behind, right?" In the end, Ziyue and Comet Flicker, having their thoughts guessed, were appointed as friendship ambassadors and officially settled down in Ponyville. Meanwhile, Biki, who had been holding back for a long time, finally found the opportunity to jump out. "Let's throw an unprecedented celebration party for Ziyue and Comet Flicker." All the ponies in Ponyville joined in this grand party, including Princess Celestia and Princess Luna. However, even so, there was still one pony missing from the festivities. Lying in the medical pod, immersed in a light green liquid, Comet Flicker felt a bit gloomy listening to the celebration outside. He knew he was indeed too injured to participate in these parties, and Ziyue, who initially wanted to accompany him, had been persuaded to go enjoy time with her new friends. But he was still quite frustrated. How boring. If I had known, I would have let Ziyue come chat with me. Just then, a pink figure suddenly appeared outside the medical pod, swiftly placing a piece of cake inside. "Here, this is your cake. I won't allow any pony to miss out on the party while I'm here." Comet Flicker was left dumbfounded as he was stuffed with cake, then watched in confusion as Biki slipped away. He then gave up on questioning the matter and started tasting the cake in his mouth. "Well, at least this cake tastes pretty good." Chapter 16. Post-disaster reconstruction. Although all the crises were over, many ponies' homes in Ponyville were damaged due to all the events. So, the morning after the party, everyone began a vigorous repair effort. Almost all the ponies in Ponyville joined in, including the newly arrived Ziyue and Comet Flicker. Leading the way with a hop and a skip was Biki, who said to them, "Thank you, Ziyue and Comet Flash. It's truly a great help that you came to assist in fixing the candy house. I don't know what caused it, but the whole candy house has been gnawed to pieces by those guys." Upon hearing this, Ziyue shook her head and didn't seem to mind. "It's okay, Biki. After all, apart from Roro's house being far away, most of the other ponies' houses have basically suffered from their toxic hooves. Even Suelong was called over to help fix the carousel costume shop at Jinxi's place." That said, when Comet Flash saw the pile of the candy house filled with bite marks and gnawing traces, and even the dessert decorations on top had been completely eaten, she couldn't help but complain. "By the way, What reason do those nightmares have to bite these houses? They're all formed from nightmares. They shouldn't even need to eat. Perhaps it's because they actually need these things to replenish their energy? Zeus said somewhat uncertainly. At times like this, do they follow scientific principles even more? I think they might just be purely attracted by the sweet smell of the candy house, Comet Flash said, shaking her head as she looked at the messy roof. However, Beaky raised an objection to this. The roof of the candy house isn't tasty at all. I secretly tried it before, and the magical taste inside is very strange. That's right, strange. After eating it, I couldn't eat any cake for a whole hour. Saying this, she made a disgusted expression as if she were cleaning her tongue. Beaky's adventurous spirit towards desserts, or things that look like desserts, also left Comet Flash and Zeus somewhat speechless. However, in contrast, the answer to the previous question was finally revealed. So they were attracted by the magic within? It seems those guys attack all objects with magic, huh? So land ponies and flying ponies also have magic? Hearing Comet Flash's remarks, Beaky was somewhat surprised. However, Comet Flash replied, based on the unscientific things you usually do, Beaky, this is really not something you should be surprised about. Moreover, the magic of flying ponies and land ponies just can't be expressed directly like unicorns. Like me, they can still use magic through inventions, but right now, it's just limited by costs and can't be popularized. Zeus, who was beside them, also agreed, as she felt that if she were to search for the unresolved mysteries on Beaky, she could write a whole book about it. In response, Beaky could only give a smile that suggested she wanted to gloss over it, since even she wasn't quite clear on what the principles were. However, Zeus and Comet Flash didn't press further, but directly started the reconstruction work on the candy house. After all, sometimes pony matters really don't need to be so clearly understood. Celestia is above. I hope the poor little Swailon can comfort her. At this moment, inside the Canterlot Castle, Sister, I'm really sorry for causing you so much trouble and injuring your students so severely. Luna, you don't have to blame yourself so much. We all know it was the evil nightmare that controlled you. And it was also because I neglected your feelings 1,000 years ago that led to all this happening. Saying this, the Cosmic Princess embraced the Moon Princess once more. So please forgive me, okay? Don't blame yourself anymore, my sister. Feeling the warmth of an embrace she hadn't felt in 1,000 years. Tears once again welled up in the Moon Princess's eyes as she buried her head deep in the Cosmic Princess's embrace. But I can still feel that I have hurt many ponies, especially that pony named Comet Flash. It feels like there's still their blood on my hooves. Sister? Looking at the Cosmic Princess with a smile, the Moon Princess looked somewhat confused. At this moment, the Cosmic Princess also wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and smiled at the Moon Princess. I'm very sorry, my sister. I just remembered the current miserable state of that nightmare. It has now been mostly eliminated by that grudge-holding little Comet Flash. And only a small part is left for daily electrocution and various experiments. Saying this, the Cosmic Princess also covered her mouth and whispered in the Moon Princess's ear. The last time I went to see that guy, it even asked me to give it a quick end. Immediately after, the Cosmic Princess took out an envelope from her body and handed it to Luna. Moreover, that little Comet Flash has long since forgiven you. He even anticipated that you might think this way and left you a letter of encouragement. This little guy's drawing skills are really not commendable. Looking at the somewhat comical pony face on the envelope, the Moon Princess couldn't help but laugh, watching her sister finally relax in her embrace. The Cosmic Princess gently rested her head on the Moon Princess's head and slowly said, and although I don't really want to admit it, this time, that little Comet Flash really did better than I did. Even though I was trapped on the moon and couldn't do anything, no pony was hurt under his protection. The injuries on his own body have long been fully healed. To be honest, I'm really glad I took in this student. This may be the most correct decision I've ever made. Saying this, the Cosmic Princess looked at the Moon Princess in her arms again. So can you rest assured now, my lovely little sister? However, the Moon Princess only let out a soft grunt and buried her head even deeper. What a little sister who loves to act spoiled. Saying this, she slowly closed her eyes, enjoying this rare sisterly reunion. If one were to ignore Beaky, who was taking pictures with the summoning device on the side, it was Comet Flash who sensed that there was a scene he wanted and instructed me to take a photo. After explaining this warm scene, Beaky quickly disappeared into the world again. Looking at this magical scene, the Cosmic Princess and Moon Princess exchanged glances and finally couldn't help but laugh together. What an interesting little pony, isn't it? At this moment, Comet Flash, looking at the warm scene in the summoning device, couldn't help but give Beaky a thumbs up. As expected of Beaky, I knew asking you was the right choice. Finally, a satisfied Comet Flash brought Beaky a large pile of exclusive cakes, although she devoured them all in one go. Chapter 17. The ticket incident of the galloping celebration finally done. Sometimes, if you don't push yourself, you really want to know how capable you are. Looking at the fully constructed everything house in front of him, Comet Flash couldn't help but wipe the sweat from his forehead and let out a long sigh of relief. After all, building this structure in the large laboratory underneath wasn't easy. Even with the help of various inventions, it took him several days. Speaking of which, should I invite everyone to celebrate? Comet Flash thought to himself. However, before Comet Flash could make a decision, a pink pony suddenly popped up from underground. With a complete piece of earth on her head, Beaky smiled and wrapped her forelegs around Comet Flash's neck. I think I heard a pony wants to throw a party. If you need us, we can start right away. Even though Comet Flash had seen Beaky's magical operations many times, each time he witnessed them still amazed him greatly. I haven't even said anything yet. How did you know, Beaky? Of course, it's thanks to my party search radar. It's my reliable partner that ensures I never miss a party. Saying this, Beaky patted her fluffy tail, which was still pointing at Comet Flash. All right, it seems the rumors about Beaky's tail being an independent entity are indeed true. If Ziwe were here, she would definitely drag you to conduct experiments. Looking at Beaky's tail, which is even more amazing than most of his inventions, Comet Flicker couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. However, after some thought, Comet Flicker temporarily declined Beaky's offer. After all, there are quite a few instruments in the lab that might still need adjustments and adaptation to the new environment, so it might not be suitable to hold a party in a short time. Oh, all right, but if you want to hold another party, you must remember to tell me. Beaky felt a bit disappointed upon hearing Comet Flicker's words, but her optimism quickly returned. Meanwhile, Comet Flicker curiously walked over to take another look at the patch of land. However, he couldn't find the crack that should have appeared. It was as if the pit had never existed. At this moment, Comet Flicker remembered what Beaky had said earlier. Beaky mentioned that she would encounter good things today, and it seemed that Ziwe and Swailong went to help Applejack pick apples, which turned out to be the plot of the Galloping Gala. Speaking of which, Comet Flicker recalled the events Ziwe was about to experience next. Alright, it looks like I need to prepare some snacks for Ziwe and wait for her at the library. I'm a bit hungry too. I'll make her the hay burger she likes. As Comet Flicker spoke, he headed towards the dining hall. Oh my, these little ponies have gone completely crazy. Ziwe, who was hiding in a corner and trembling, tightly hugged Swailong in her arms. Outside, a large group of ponies was searching for them. Ever since Beaky leaked the news, almost all the ponies in Ponyville were attracted by the tickets for the Galloping Gala she had. Thinking of this, Ziwe collapsed and covered her head with her hooves. Right now, I just hope we can hide in this corner a little longer before those ponies find me. I think it might be too late, Ziwe. At that moment, Swailong pointed to a pony nearby who seemed to have discovered them. Oh no, they are over there. Upon hearing this, the other ponies immediately rushed toward them. Pick me, pick me. Watching the ponies gradually closing in on her, Ziwe had no choice but to close her eyes and cast a teleportation spell. With a flash of light, Ziwe and Swailong instantly disappeared from their spot. Meanwhile, in the library, Swailong, who was charred black all over, let out a puff of black smoke. Ziwe, remember to say something next time you use this move. The situation was urgent, and I didn't expect to use this move. Comet Flicker, why are you here too? Ziwe suddenly looked at Comet Flicker, who appeared out of nowhere and was eating a hamburger. Comet Flicker, upon seeing Ziwe, directly handed her a hamburger. I was waiting for you here, and I thought you might need this. Seeing the gigantic hamburger, Ziwe's eyes lit up. Oh, Comet Flicker, you're so thoughtful. I'm really starving right now. Saying this, Ziwe directly swallowed the entire giant hamburger. It seems you are really starving. Be careful not to choke. Cough cough, water. Give me water. Before he could finish his sentence, Ziwe covered her neck and began to seek help. Comet Flicker had no choice but to hand her the juice next to him, and after Ziwe took the juice, she drank it all in one go. Phew, I'm alive again. After eating and drinking enough, Ziwe comfortably lay on the ground, satisfied and rubbing her belly. At this moment, she felt like she had forgotten something. Ziwe, the tickets. No, I really can't make a decision. You are all my best friends, and I don't want to disappoint any of you, but I really can't do it. Saying this, Ziwe lay on the ground and hugged her head with her hooves. The other ponies, looking at each other, realized their mistakes. Applejack was the first to step forward. I'm sorry, dear, I didn't think I would put so much pressure on you. You can give the tickets to someone else. I want to be angry. Me too. Me too. The other ponies also came over to comfort Ziwe, except for Rainbow Dash. So that means the tickets are mine now. However, under the scrutinizing gazes of everyone, Rainbow Dash ultimately conceded. My special skill probably needs more practice. I don't want the tickets anymore. Saying this, Ziwe prepared to have Swailong draft a letter to Princess Celestia. Actually, there's no need to do this. Comet Flicker, watching Ziyue and the others reconcile, nodded in satisfaction. Then stopped Ziyue and took out several tickets for the Galloping Gala. By the way, I actually anticipated this issue, so I asked the teacher for everyone's tickets in advance. Ziyue and the others looked at the tickets in Comet Flicker's hooves with surprise. So now we can all go to the Galloping Gala. Hooray! Everyone cheered happily, and even little Suilong joined in. Although he quickly forced himself to pretend to be indifferent again. Hearing this good news, they happily hugged each other. And Comet Flicker promptly took out his camera to capture this warm moment. However, before he could take a few pictures, he was pulled into the group by the girls to take a big group photo. Say cheese. With smiles on their faces, they left their first, and definitely not the last, joyful group photo. Finally, Ziyue and her friends wrote down their insights about friendship from today's events to Princess Celestia, satisfactorily concluding their day. That night, lying alone in bed, Ziyue looked at the warm photo in her hooves and couldn't help but smile happily. Thank you, Comet Flicker. Chapter 18, Tired Applejack. Part 1. This morning, Comet Flicker was leisurely walking on the roads of Ponyville, preparing to find Ziyue to read together. Looking at the peaceful scenery on the street. The ponies were all leisurely doing their own things, and even Comet Flicker couldn't help but exclaim, "Truly Ponyville, another calm and beautiful day." However, whether it was due to his bad luck or the nature of Ponyville acting up again, before he could finish his sentence, the ground suddenly trembled. Slap. Comet Flicker slapped his forehead. At least now, having experienced quite a bit in Ponyville, everyone had already gotten used to it. However, his final hope was interrupted again by Rainbow Dash's shout of galloping. Quickly hide. Looking at the silent Comet Flicker from the sky, Rainbow Dash felt a bit curious. Comet Flicker, what is wrong with you? Why do you look like that? To this, Comet Flicker just waved his hoof, indicating that he was fine, perhaps, and then raised his head to Rainbow Dash and said, "No, let us go see what is happening first." Soon, Comet Flicker and Ziyue arrived at the entrance of Ponyville. Looking at the large herd of cows gradually stampeding towards them in the distance, all the ponies appeared a bit nervous, except for Beaky, who was playing with a tremolo nearby. "You all sound so silly." In front, Comet Flicker took out the celestial summoning device, planning to freeze them if things got out of hand, to let them calm down. Yippee! However, at this critical moment, a familiar voice emerged once again. Applejack showed up just in time, directing Fiona to approach the herd of cows. "You go over there. Quickly turn, little cows." After Fiona started assisting on the other side of the herd, she immediately blended in among the cows, lassoed the lead cow, and pulled hard. Just before the herd was about to charge into Ponyville, she managed to redirect their path. The little ponies, seeing that the herd would not rush into Ponyville, began to cheer, and even Pinkie Pie, who had her head buried in a popcorn bucket, pulled out a small flag to wave for Applejack. Of course, she didn't forget to praise Applejack. "This is the most amazing cowboy performance I've ever seen. Moo cough cough, Applejack, I'm really sorry. It's just that our Moorella saw a big bad snake. To be honest, we were all scared." At this moment, the lead cow was also a bit embarrassed explaining. However, Applejack didn't mind too much. After all, the cows could easily get scared over such small things. "So that is how it is. But please try to avoid Ponyville next time, okay?" "We will, Applejack." And just like that, a major crisis was nipped in the bud by Applejack, which was quite a relief. Even the mayor couldn't help but say to Twilight and the others, "Applejack is truly amazing." Pinkie Pie, peeking her head from above the screen, completed the mayor's sentence, but the next second she fell down due to the scene zooming out. However, the mayor, already used to it, continued, "You're right. So how should we thank Applejack for single-handedly saving Ponyville?" I think the answer is quite obvious. Indeed. And Pinkie Pie did not disappoint their expectations, as she jumped up and exclaimed the classic celebration method, "A big party." At this moment, Twilight and Comet were also wearing expressions of as expected, and then they tapped their hooves in unison. A week later, the party prepared for Applejack was ready, and the entire town hall was filled with various colorful papers, streamers, and balloons. Many little ponies had already gathered here in advance. At this moment, Twilight and Comet, who had just arrived, were chatting with Spike and the prepared Rarity. "How is the party preparation going, Rarity?" "Just a little more to go." Rarity had just finished arranging the bows on the trees and was about to hang a banner above the town hall. "Now it's done." Having completed everything, Rarity turned to Twilight and Comet. At this moment, Twilight curiously asked, "Has Applejack arrived?" Hearing Twilight's question, Rainbow Dash flew over. "I haven't seen her for a week." "Me neither," Pinkie Pie chimed in. "But she will definitely come. Applejack is never late." Rainbow Dash was very confident in Applejack. Soon, the celebration party for Applejack officially began, and Twilight took a thick stack of speeches to the podium. "Welcome, every pony. Today we are here to honor a helpful pony for her contributions. But before she could finish, Rainbow Dash rushed up to the podium, excitedly talking about how Applejack was going to help her practice new flying techniques. By the end, she was so happy that she squeezed her face with her hooves. Then Pinkie Pie, who was going to help make a cake, and Fluttershy, who was going to help the little bunnies with the bunny census, took turns to come up. Just when Twilight thought everyone had finally finished speaking, the mayor looked at her with an awkward yet polite smile. Oh, forget it. Completely giving up. Twilight threw down her huge stack of speeches and stepped down from the podium, while the mayor cleared his throat a couple of times before officially starting his speech. All right, let us keep it short. I am honored to present the Ponyville Outstanding Pony Award to. During the mayor's speech, an angry Twilight walked over to Comet, who was secretly laughing. Seeing Comet turning her head and chuckling, Twilight became even angrier. Humph. She stepped hard on Comet's hoof, and before Comet could let out a yelp, she covered her mouth with her other hoof. Having done all this, Twilight felt refreshed. After all, who told her to laugh at her secretly? Meanwhile, Comet could only look pitifully at her squished hoof, resembling a plush toy, with a tearful expression, as she had been caught laughing at Twilight. Chapter 19, Tired Applejack. Part 2. However, just after the mayor announced Applejack's award and opened the curtain beside him, the expected figure did not appear. The little ponies immediately showed worried expressions, and Spike, who had shouted the loudest moments ago, awkwardly rubbed his shoulders and asked, "Where's Applejack?" "I'm here." A voice suddenly came from behind the ponies. "Sorry, excuse me, I didn't mean to step on your tail." Applejack, carrying 2 large baskets of apples, squeezed her way to the front of the stage with some difficulty. "I'm here, Miss Mayor. Thank you so much for giving me this Outstanding Pony Award. What a shiny trophy. I look so funny in it." Applejack looked at the somewhat ridiculous reflection in the trophy and couldn't help but laugh while swaying in front of it. Whoopee. Pinkie Pie certainly wouldn't miss such a fun moment, and she and Applejack giggled together, looking at their constantly changing reflections in the trophy. "All right, Applejack. Thank you for stopping that terrible stampede. You are always so helpful." "Yes, I just love helping every pony." However, before she could finish her sentence, Applejack closed her eyes and fell asleep on the spot, but she quickly woke up again. After shaking her head to stay awake, Applejack hurriedly grabbed the trophy and dragged it away. Twilight looked at the obviously not quite normal Applejack with some concern. "Don't you think Applejack looks a bit tired, dizzy, dirty? Maybe she needs my strong coffee?" Facing Comet's outrageous statement, even Rarity's answer seemed not so surprising. Seeing everyone looking at her, Comet helplessly shrugged. "Don't you all think so? She looks really tired." Twilight face-bombed. "Don't mention your strong coffee. I slept an entire day after drinking it last time. Do you know how much that messed up my plans? I don't know how you managed to make coffee have a drowsy effect, but it was clearly because you had stayed up for 3 or 4 nights at that time, right? And Applejack looks just like you did back then, doesn't she?" Comet appeared somewhat innocent, as she was only trying to help by offering her strong coffee. However, Pinkie Pie was quite confident in Applejack. "I think she is doing great. And Applejack is the most reliable pony." In the end, Twilight still did not agree to Comet's plan to force Applejack to rest. "Let us keep that as a backup plan for the backup plan." All right. Wanting to find out what exactly was going on, Twilight took Comet to Sweet Apple Acres. In this place, it was no surprise that they saw Applejack kicking the apple tree. However, her mental state did not seem very good. She even kicked over a wooden barrel that was already full of apples. What exactly is Applejack doing? A worried Zua quickly teleported to the side of Applejack, who had just accidentally fallen asleep. "Applejack, what are you doing?" After a conversation, Zua learned about Applejack's current issues and offered to help her collect apples. However, Applejack ruthlessly rejected her, even challenging Zua to a bet to see if she could collect all the apples by herself. At this moment, Comet Shimmer, who had just been rejected and was a bit dazed, walked over to Zua. "So, you should know why I said and did this, right? That's why you prepared so many drones that seem to be for harvesting something in advance. Is it some kind of prophecy? But why didn't you say it earlier?" Zua felt that her mind was filled with more questions. However, looking at the mischievous little pony in front of her still smiling, she quickly figured out what she needed to do. Soon, under Zua's pressure, Comet Shimmer quickly revealed her plan in detail. "I actually wanted to wait until everyone persuaded Applejack, and then I would have those drones help harvest all the apples. Since you already knew about this, why didn't you let everyone persuade Applejack earlier?" Zua raised an eyebrow, looking puzzled at Comet Shimmer. "Do you think I haven't tried? At that time, I was almost able to persuade Applejack through reasoning, but unexpectedly, she didn't play fair. Seeing that I couldn't convince her, she kicked me out of Sweet Apple Acres. I flew so far. I really suspect that if Applejack had kicked harder, I might have been kicked all the way to Ponyville." Comet Shimmer gestured with her hooves to show how far she had been kicked. Then why didn't you call us to go with you? Ziyue asked, puzzled. Let's not even mention the overly confident Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie. I think even if you went with me, it would just mean that instead of one pony being kicked away, there would be two. Applejack wasn't that tired at the time. Comet Shimmer patted Ziyue's head as she spoke. However, at this moment, Suilong suddenly looked at the now empty Sweet Apple Acres and exclaimed, "Where's Applejack?" She suddenly disappeared. Oh no, she must have gone to help Rainbow Dash and the others. This is not good. After exchanging worried glances, Comet Shimmer and Ziyue hurriedly ran out of Sweet Apple Acres. However, seeing Rainbow Dash already embedded in the balcony of the Golden Oak Library, Ziyue and Comet Shimmer realized they might be a bit late. Nevertheless, after helping Rainbow Dash with some treatment, they quickly rushed to the next location. Ziyue even rode on Comet Shimmer's back to increase their speed, leaving poor Suilong hanging from their tails. When they arrived at Sugar Cube Corner, they saw that under Applejack's astonishing wisdom, all the ponies who tasted the pastries had been wiped out, with cries of agony echoing everywhere. And even Pinkie's face had turned green. No, I won't eat pastries anymore. No more, wow. Suilong looked at the worms crawling out of the leftover pastries with a shocked expression, but after tasting one, he showed an unexpectedly delighted smile. Watching Pinkie retching, Comet Shimmer and Ziyue quickly tossed out the special medicine they had prepared and rushed towards Fluttershy's home. I hope it's not too late. Fortunately, they successfully stopped Applejack before she scared away all the little bunnies, causing a second mad dash. At this moment, Ziyue looked seriously at Applejack, who was pinned beneath her. Applejack, you need to stop everything you're doing right now. You can't handle so many things all by yourself. However, faced with Ziyue's accusations, Applejack seemed unconvinced and waved her hooves, saying, "Who says? I'm managing to collect apples while also helping all my friends. Right now, I'm helping Fluttershy chase the bunnies." Oh, really? Ziyue squinted at the defiant Applejack in front of her. Then how do you explain Rainbow Dash, who was thrown onto the balcony? The group of food-poisoned ponies including Pinkie, and these frightened little guys? She pointed to the little bunnies huddled together, trembling. At this moment, the somewhat revived Applejack looked at the poor little creatures and her friends, who were in a pitiful state because of Ziyue's words, and had to admit that she might have acted a bit impulsively. I suppose I was a bit impulsive, but I still managed to collect almost all the apples from Sweet Apple Acres by myself. I could finish it all tonight. Is that so? Ziyue then teleported Applejack back to Sweet Apple Acres. See, I told you I was right. Applejack proudly pointed to the area of the orchard that had been nearly harvested. However, as Ziyue turned her head to another area that had not yet been picked, Applejack's smile froze on her face. There are still so many apples. Applejack fell to the ground in disbelief. At this moment, Ziyue looked earnestly at her and said, "All right, Applejack, I respect the traditions of your family, and you always help those in need. But sometimes you need your friends to help you too. We are friends, aren't we? Okay. I don't want to hear you say no at all. I'm saying yes. Please, I need your help." Under the dual persuasion of reality and Ziyue, Applejack ultimately relented. Seeing that the task was accomplished, Ziyue quickly waved her hoof at Comet Shimmer, who had just arrived. Upon seeing the signal from Ziyue, Comet Shimmer activated the drone summoning program. With the buzzing of wings, several large harvesting drones arrived at Sweet Apple Acres, accompanied by a now healthy Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, and Rarity. In the end, everyone worked together to harvest all the apples in Sweet Apple Acres. Applejack learned how to accept help from others, and Ziyue even received her friendship report. Only the poor Suilong was left tasting the pastries that no pony wanted. By the way, thanks to the effects of the strong coffee sponsored by an unknown pony, Applejack slept for a whole day and night before waking up, fully refreshed. Chapter 20, Summon. Confession. Where is this place? Just waking up and still a bit dazed, Comet Shimmer looked around this dark, mysterious space. He clearly remembered that he had just fallen asleep. When did he end up here? Could it be an enemy from a dream? What a headache, once he gets out. He needs to give that nightmare guy a good shock to prevent him from causing trouble again. He just doesn't know when Princess Luna will find him. With that thought, Comet Shimmer stood up and began to patrol this dark space, as sitting idly was not his style. However, he had not walked far when a pure white pony, glowing softly and obscuring its true appearance, suddenly appeared before him. "Hi, do you know where Nightmare is?" Seeing this mysterious pony, Comet Shimmer, not daring to act rashly, cautiously greeted it. In an instant, countless pieces of information flooded into Comet Flicker's mind. Before he could say anything, he lost consciousness once again. What the heck, it hurts. Comet Flicker suddenly spread his wings and woke up from bed, but due to the force, he ended up tumbling to the ground. Slowly getting up from the floor, Comet Flicker shook his still dazed head and organized his current situation a bit. A mysterious little pony claiming to be the world's consciousness had stuffed a bunch of strange things into his head during his dream. And now he was supposed to go save other worlds invaded by dark forces. Comet Flicker couldn't help but cover his head with his hoof. Have I been too busy lately? Otherwise, how could I have such a ridiculous dream? Although the whole situation felt somewhat absurd to him, the cute, glowing, and slightly warm emblem on his rear was still reminding him that this was not a dream, but something that was really happening. Well, thinking about that mysterious little pony claiming to be the world's will. Their behavior of stuffing information into my head without warning was indeed similar to what happened when I was pulled into this world. With that thought, Comet Flicker shrugged, giving up on the confusion and looking out at the still deep night outside the window. Forget it. At least this guy was willing to tell me all of this in advance, instead of choosing to become a riddle pony and randomly dragging me to become a soldier. After all, what he could do now was to take the time to have a good sleep, because saving the world next would not be a small project. After all, if he didn't get enough sleep and ended up crashing, it wouldn't be fun. I've been too busy with experiments lately. It's been a long time since I've had such a satisfying sleep. Waking up naturally, Comet Flicker stretched lazily and slowly got out of bed. After washing up, he pressed a button in the room, and with the sound of mechanical operation, he and the floor beneath him slowly sank down into the laboratory below. He then arrived at the base he had built for convenient emergency contact. Looking at the sci-fi steel fortress in front of him, Comet Flicker couldn't help but feel a little proud of his decision. I knew it. Preparing the base in advance was a good idea. Although the reason he built the base first was just due to his deep-rooted infrastructure instincts as someone from a construction-oriented nation, it still didn't stop him from putting his hands on his hips and feeling proud. With Comet Flicker's arrival, a circular table with 9 seats slowly rose from the ground. This was the seating arrangement he had prepared for Ziyue and Princess Universe, with each chair back even engraved with each pony's cute emblem. Each chair was also covered with teleportation functionality, ensuring they could gather quickly when needed. As Comet Flicker sent out the gathering information, Ziyue and the others quickly responded to his call and arrived. Even Princess Universe and Princess Luna, who couldn't come temporarily, appeared in projection form. Seeing that everyone had gathered, Comet Flicker began to explain to them everything that had happened last night and the issues that had arisen before. Then, what does it mean when a mysterious little pony claiming to be the world's consciousness stuffed a bunch of strange things into your head in your dream and then told you to save other worlds invaded by dark forces? Have you done too many experiments lately, or have I been staying up too late reading? Listening to Comet Flicker's description, Ziyue was the first to show an incredulous expression. Applejack was even more confused, her eyes starting to spin in their sockets from the jumble of words. Darling, I recognize every word you said, but put together, I don't quite understand what it means. At this moment, Pinkie Pie jumped beside Comet Flicker with a look of amazement. Oh my gosh, I really didn't expect you, Comet Flicker, to be an alien pony. By the way, are we going to hold a celebration party for alien ponies? To be honest, this is even cooler than I imagined, by 20 times or more. Enough. Looking at her friends, Ziyue slammed her hoof on the table, interrupting their discussion. Don't you realize the seriousness of the situation? Comet Flicker will be sent to other worlds to save them. He might be captured by bad guys from other worlds, or eaten by monsters from other worlds, or worse, he might be captured by bad guys first and then eaten by monsters. As countless terrifying images flashed through her mind, Ziyue's expression gradually lost control, and that familiar face of hers appeared once again before everyone. Fortunately, Comet Flicker quickly ran to her side, rubbing her mane and scratching her chin, which helped Ziyue, who was on the verge of an outburst, calm down and reveal a relaxed smile. Pudding. Well, it seems the soothing effect might have been a bit too much. At this moment, Princess Universe, who had been thinking for a while, finally spoke up. Ziyue's concerns were not unreasonable. Traveling between worlds inherently carries significant risks, especially when it involves saving other worlds invaded by dark forces. My royal sister is right, Princess Luna added. According to what Comet Flicker said, in the normal timeline, Nightmare Moon did not have the power to command nightmares. Nor did she possess such a strong nightmare possession. It would be enough for you all to purify it. However, this invading dark force has made it several times stronger. If you want to save other worlds, Comet Flicker is likely to face life-threatening dangers. At this moment, the other ponies finally realized what Comet Flicker was about to face next. Can't we just give up? Ziyue asked anxiously. Seeing this, Comet Flicker shook his head. I'm afraid not. Besides, leaving the pony that should go save others behind is not my style. Moreover, the world's consciousness also said she would save my life when it was most critical. So Ziyue, you can rest assured. But Ziyue wanted to say something more. But seeing Comet Flicker's resolute gaze, she couldn't bring herself to speak. You always do this, treating me like some clueless child, just like back then. Countless moments spent with Comet Flicker flashed through her mind, and Ziyue seemed to finally make a decision. Driven by strong emotions within her heart, Ziyue directly grabbed Comet Flicker's head in front of her and kissed him. Oh my gosh. The other ponies were also shocked at this scene. Clearly, he was just a bookworm usually. Who would have thought he would be so bold at this moment? Click. Princess Universe instinctively took out her camera to capture this rare moment. Feeling the soft touch on his lips, Comet Flicker felt his mind go blank. As if the only thing left in this world was her kissing him. After a long time, their lips parted. Comet Flicker and Ziyue looked at each other. Their cheeks flushed from the kiss, and slowly embraced each other. I like you, Comet Flicker, it's been a long time. Me too, Ziyue. Perhaps I've liked you longer than you realize, long enough that I can't even remember when it started. Chapter 21. Searching. Should we not disturb them? Agreed. Party. Watching Ziyue and Comet Flash embrace each other, the other little ponies also kindly made space for them. Even Pinkie Pie, who was about to shout about throwing a party, was covered by Applejack and Rarity's mouths and carried away. However, they all left without completely leaving. After departing, they each poked their heads out from beside the door, staying on the front lines of the gossip. Finally realizing what she had just done, Ziyue's face instantly turned red, and she chose to bury her head directly in Comet Flash's embrace, playing the ostrich. At that moment, Comet Flash looked at the adorable, blushing Ziyue in his arms, and his brain overloaded, causing a mushroom cloud of steam to explode above his head. After all, the usually bookish Ziyue, who occasionally enjoyed making funny faces, suddenly being so bold had a significant impact on him. So, does this mean we're together now? After holding each other for a while longer, Comet Flash seemed still unable to believe what had just happened. It was just too surreal. He even started to wonder if he was so tired that he was hallucinating. Of course, my Comet Flash. Do you need me to repeat it? Seeing Comet Flash's dazed expression, which was even more nervous than hers, Ziyue couldn't help but tease him by tugging at his still blushing face. After all, it was quite rare to see the usually mature and steady Comet Flash, who never backed down even in the face of Nightmare Moon, show such a silly expression like he just saw a rare treasure. No need, I love you. Upon hearing this, Comet Flash couldn't help but hold Ziyue in his arms once again, and Ziyue let out a somewhat proud hum. Me too. As for why they didn't kiss again, heaven knows, for Comet Flash and Ziyue, who had never been so intimate with other ponies, this was still a bit too stimulating. They decided to take it slow. Ugh, how cheesy. I thought it would be cooler. What a relationship to envy. I really hope I can find my Prince Charming soon. So can we throw a party now? The students have grown up. Moreover, those 7 pairs of curious eyes are still watching. Walking down the street, Comet Flash still felt a bit dizzy. After all, everything that had just happened was so sudden and wonderful that it felt like he was walking on clouds. No, now is not the time to get lost in this feeling. Saying that, Comet Flash shook his head to force his thoughts to stabilize. But he soon realized that he didn't have much to do right now. After all, Ziyue and the others had gone to prepare for his special training and had temporarily taken over his laboratory, so he found himself in a long-lost state of idleness. Suddenly, Comet Flash had an idea. Why not go look for Cola? After all, it seemed like it had been a long time since he last saw her. And this would also give him a chance to introduce her to Ziyue. But he wondered how she was getting along with everyone in Ponyville. Without hesitation, Comet Flash immediately flew toward the Everfree Forest. However, our poor Comet Flash did not realize that the real special training had already begun. Thanks to his good speed, Comet Flash quickly arrived at Cola's place. However, when he opened the door, the house was empty. Did she go out to gather herbs? What bad luck. Just as he was about to leave to look elsewhere, a massive scorpion with a lion's tail suddenly pounced out from the nearby bushes. What the heck? How could there be a lion-tailed scorpion here? Just managing to dodge this attack, Comet Flash looked at the creature that had suddenly ambushed him in surprise. After all, generally speaking, wild beasts wouldn't willingly approach the beast-repelling powder that Cola scattered near her house. Could it be that she spilled some, or did this guy have a stuffy nose? However, a single lion-tailed scorpion wasn't enough to make Comet Flash feel pressured. As long as he wanted, this guy wouldn't even touch a hair on him before being defeated. Saying this, Comet Flash issued a warning to the lion-tailed scorpion in front of him. If it didn't want to get hurt, it was still time to leave. However, the lion-tailed scorpion didn't heed Comet Flash's threat. Instead, it humanized a slightly mocking smile. Before Comet Flash could understand why this creature was so fearless, the lion-tailed scorpion swung its claws, and several more lion-tailed scorpions jumped out from the bushes behind it. Seeing the swarm of lion-tailed scorpions that burst out from the little bush beside Cola's door, even Comet Flash couldn't help but twitch at the corner of his eye. After all, how could such a small bush hold so many large creatures? Was it some strange magic compression technique? No wonder anyone hiding in the bushes wouldn't be noticed. Looking at this pile of creatures in front of him, Comet Flash felt a bit of pressure for the first time in a while. But did you think I would be afraid if you all came at me together? Ridiculous. Just perfect. I'll defeat you all, and then go find Cola. The Xingtian armor, huh? Just as Comet Flash was about to transform, he suddenly realized he had nothing to transform into. It suddenly dawned on him that his Xingtian armor had been borrowed by Ziyue for enchantment and research. And it wasn't he with him right now. Before he could continue to summon it, the lion-tailed scorpions in front of him suddenly lunged at him. Comet Flash could only roll to the side to avoid the attack. Were these guys being controlled by someone from behind? However, the lion-tailed scorpions didn't seem to intend to give Comet Flash much time to think. They all pounced toward him. Bad luck. Comet Flash had to spread his wings again to dodge this attack. A thrilling parkour chase began. As Comet Flash ran frantically, the number of pursuers behind him grew larger. Occasionally ambushed by swamp monsters, a bear bee, and even a few wooden wolves that came from who knows where, they all joined the chase. Bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. Comet Flash, being chased like crazy, had no time to summon the Xingtian armor, and flying made him an easy target for those swamp monsters. He couldn't find that feeling of instant summoning at all. Damn it. And so far, he hadn't found any trace of Cola. Things were getting a bit dire. Comet Flash had already circled around Cola's house with this group of creatures, and still found nothing. An uneasy feeling was building in his heart. Could it be that dark forces are invading again? No, I can't delay any longer. With his heart racing, Comet Flash suddenly stopped, then turned around and kicked a wooden wolf that was running at the front, exploding it instantly. After doing this, Comet Flash faced the group of monsters again, but this time his eyes shone with determination. As if sensing Comet Flash's steadfast will, his cute emblem began to glow once more. This is the will I want to protect. Xingtian armor, merge. With a flash of light, the familiar armor reappeared in front of the enemies. Now, you all come at me together. Chapter 22. Special training. However, at this moment, aside from the wooden wolves, all the other creatures stepped back a few paces upon seeing the armor. The few oblivious wooden wolves were completely smashed by a Xingtian light blast from Comet Flash. At this moment, Comet Flash's communicator at his waist also rang. Upon connecting, he saw Six and Cola on the other side. As Comet Flash watched the surveillance footage in front of them and the simple monitoring units around them that had deactivated their hidden mode, she roughly guessed what had happened. Seeing the slightly embarrassed group on the screen, Comet Flash could only facehoof herself. I was wondering how so many monsters suddenly appeared in the Eternal Freedom Forest. Saying this, she looked at the leader, Ziyue. I almost thought the darkness had invaded again. You really scared me. Realizing that she had indeed been a bit inconsiderate this time, Ziyue could only walk over and nuzzle Comet Flash. I'm sorry, Comet Flash. I didn't expect it to get so serious. Didn't you say before that you weren't very skilled at remote summoning yet? I just thought of this method because I saw something similar in a book and wanted to make the monsters chase you to help create some pressure. Seeing Ziyue like this, Comet Flash didn't know what else to say. Moreover, she did do it to help, so she could only reach out her hoof and mess up Ziyue's mane. I guess I was a bit too nervous. But how did Cola end up with you guys again? At that moment, the pink little pony bounced over to Comet Flash proudly and said, I introduced her. Cola just happened to come to Ponyville to buy some things today, so I directly introduced her to Ziyue, and she will help us prepare some potions for you. There will even be a potion party today. How about that? Isn't it great? Saying this, she winked at everyone. I think this idea isn't very good. Did you forget the consequences of eating random things last time, Pinky? Saying this, Comet Flash took out a familiar bottle of blue flowers. Poison joke. Get that away. At this moment, Pinky jumped away several dozen meters from Comet Flash as if facing a great enemy. It was clear that she remembered the last time Comet Flash brought out this thing, and her curiosity led her to taste it, resulting in her tongue swelling for an entire day. Not being able to speak clearly for a whole day was a nightmare for Pinky, comparable to a super nightmare of not being able to eat cake for a day. Meanwhile, the lucky Fluttershy, who hadn't encountered it last time, was curiously examining the poison joke in Comet Flash's hoof. So, do you think this thing could make my wings bigger and let me fly faster? I'm afraid that's not possible. Comet Flash shook her head. The effect of poison joke is just like its name. It's a cruel joke. And it won't kindly help you strengthen your wings. At most, it will turn your wings upside down or make one wing bigger and the other smaller. Ugh. Then never mind. If it turns out like that, it wouldn't be cool at all. At this point, Comet Flash seemed to remember something and turned to Ziyue. And didn't you say you were going to create a complete training plan for me? How is that coming along? Of course, it's all ready. I even made a list for it. Saying this, Ziyue pulled out a long scroll of the list, which was so long that it rolled out to the feet of Pinky before it was fully unrolled. Over the next few days, you'll practice some advanced magic that might come in handy with me. Then train your reaction speed with Pinky, and Princess Luna will come to train your combat skills. Finally, you will learn how to prepare various potions to lift curses in extreme situations with Cola every day. And I've also left you time every day for experiments. After finishing all this in one breath, Ziyue rolled up the list again and looked at Comet Flash with a proud expression. Comet Flash, who wanted to refuse this heavy intention, looked at Ziyue's expectant face but couldn't bring herself to say it. However, at that moment, a solemn figure suddenly appeared. All right, Ziyue, even for a quick learner like Comet Flash, this is indeed a heavy burden. Okay, teacher. Ziyue, who was rejected, lowered her head in disappointment. After some discussion, they finally decided on the 3 main directions for Comet Flash's upcoming training. First, practice the detailed operations of various magic with Ziyue. After all, with both intent and magic boosting, Comet Flash's magical output level isn't low. It's just that she hadn't focused on training this aspect before. Second, learn potion making and curse knowledge with Cola. After all, even a healing potion isn't omnipotent, and learning about this will significantly improve her survival chances. Finally, learn flying techniques with Fluttershy. After all, as a Pegasus, how could she lose touch with her original skills? Saying this, Princess Celestia began to use teleportation magic again. Have fun, little ponies. It's party time. Pinky, who had been waiting for a long time, pulled a rope, instantly switching the entire scene to party mode. Even Spike looked confused as he was brought here. All the ponies at the scene had party hats placed on their heads. Fluttershy, seeing the party hat on her head before she could even react, found it a bit absurd. How does Pinky always manage to do this, especially at parties? It's truly unbelievable. Yeah, she can always tidy things up so quickly. I wish I could grow apples as fast as she does. However, Pinky, seeing them in a daze, called out, "What are you all chatting about? Come and grab some apples together. The loser has to be the big dummy." Fluttershy was also spurred on by Pinky's words. Haha, I want to lose. Meanwhile, Applejack quickly followed up, "Wait for me." On the other hand, Fluttershy wasn't paying much attention. She was busy dealing with her newly arrived animal friends. After all, their appearance fee wasn't cheap, and Fluttershy had spent quite a few cookies to persuade them. Spike approached Comet Flash with apple juice and poked him, looking pitiful. "Oh my, Comet Flash, Ziyue. When did you design such a cool base? I didn't even know about it. Am I not your best little dragon?" Seeing this, Ziyue patted Spike's little head. "Sorry, Spike. I've been a bit busy lately, but you're definitely still my best dragon baby. I've indeed neglected little Spike a bit recently, but I have prepared a gift for you." However, Comet Flash appeared to be more direct, smiling as he took out a nice large ruby from his pocket and handed it to Spike. When Spike received the ruby, the gloom on his face immediately disappeared. But in order to maintain the dignity of a dragon baby, he still pretended to reluctantly accept it. "Ahem, since you're so sincere, I suppose I'll have to forgive you. It's not because of this ruby or anything." Saying this, he waved to Comet Flash and Ziyue. "You two go have fun. I have some things to take care of." However, looking at him rushing towards Pinky, it seemed that what he called important business was probably wanting to eat a gem cake. At this moment, Ziyue looked at Comet Flash with some confusion. "How come you're carrying such a large ruby with you? That doesn't seem like your style." Comet Flash showed a slightly proud expression. A pony who raises a dragon baby can't be without a delicious gem to soothe the dragon baby at any time, right? Besides, I really wanted to make a small compensation to Spike. Hearing this, Ziyue appeared to be deep in thought. After sending Swailong away, Comet Flicker also began to enjoy the party atmosphere alongside Ziyue, joining the games with friends. However, he did not forget to capture the joyful moments of his friends. Chapter 23, Harmonious Coexistence, Part 1. It was another sunny morning, and Beaky was hopping along the street, pondering what to do. Oh, today Ziyue and Comet Flicker went for special training, so I can't disturb them. Jinchi is also busy designing some magical fabric for Comet Flicker. She hasn't been out for 2 days. Beaky started tapping her head, thinking about which friend could come out to play with her. However, after a while of thinking, the light bulb representing a good idea never lit up, and a somewhat frustrated Beaky could only cover her head with her hooves. "Oh, but I feel empty-headed right now. Maybe it's because I don't have any good ideas?" Looking at the dim light bulb above her head, Beaky suddenly had an idea. She directly unscrewed it and replaced it with a bright one. As the bulb lit up, Beaky instantly had a plan. "Got it. I'll go find Yunbao to play. She hasn't gone to help with special training yet. I'm so clever." With that, Beaky continued to hop her way to find Yunbao. Soon, she arrived beneath Yunbao's cloud house. "Hey, Yunbao, do you want to play together?" Yunbao, who was taking a nap, buried her head deeper into the cloud upon hearing that voice. "Oh, here we go again." Immediately, Yunbao tried to sneak out the back door, pretending she wasn't home to avoid Biki's invitation. However, just as she was about to open the door to escape, a familiar pink pony suddenly appeared behind her, placing a hoof on her shoulder. Yunbao, where are you going? You don't want to sneak away and pretend you're not home to avoid my invitation, do you? Seeing the slightly gloomy expression on Biki's face, and feeling the pressure from the divine horse, Yunbao couldn't help but break into a cold sweat and stammered, "W would do that? I just wanted to sneak out and give you a scare. Why would you think that of me? That's good. I thought you were trying to escape because you wanted to sleep in." The clouds on Biki's face came and went quickly, and she happily took Yunbao along to start today's prank adventure. Yunbao, initially reluctant, gradually began to enjoy the process of pranking. In the end, the two little ponies used all their tricks to make each other look silly, but ultimately Biki slightly outshone Yunbao, giving her a black eye as a result. Just as they were discussing where to play next, a griffin suddenly appeared beside them. "Oh, it's Gilda. What are you doing here? I thought you weren't arriving until tomorrow?" In response to Yunbao's question, Gilda coolly huffed and said, "This trip went smoother than expected, so I came to find you early." At that moment, Yunbao began introducing Biki to Gilda. "Gilda, this is my friend, Biki. Hello." However, the big-hearted Yunbao didn't pay much attention to this and turned to introduce Gilda to Biki. "Biki, this is Gilda, my griffin friend." Curious about Gilda, Biki asked, "What is a griffin? Is it half eagle and half lion?" Yunbao, who wasn't very good at learning, wasn't too sure herself. However, Gilda didn't mind and pulled Yunbao into a hug, adding, "And really amazing too." "Haha, yes." Saying this, they high-fived, and it was clear that Yunbao thought this griffin friend was pretty great. Then Yunbao continued introducing Gilda to Biki. "Gilda is a good friend I met at the Young Flyers camp." She then turned to Gilda behind her. "Do you remember the camp song?" Upon hearing this, Gilda made a helpless expression. "I remember. They made us recite it every morning. I can never forget that awful thing." At that moment, Yunbao leaned close to Gilda, making faces at her and showing a somewhat expectant expression. Gilda's face showed a hint of hesitation, but soon she sighed and gave a look that said, "You've got me," agreeing to Yunbao's invitation to do a silly dance. "All right, just for you, Yunbao." Haha. Biki, as expected, was amused by their performance. "This is awesome. It gives me an idea for a super prank. Gilda, do you want to join? As a future griffin, I love pranks, but I think I need to go fly with Yunbao for a bit first." Saying this, she looked at Yunbao beside her. "This was something we agreed on a long time ago, right?" "Yeah." At that moment, Yunbao's expression was a bit difficult. "Biki, you wouldn't mind, right? I'll fly with Gilda for a bit, and then I'll play with you." Looking at Yunbao in front of her, Biki, feeling a bit down, could only show a nonchalant smile again. "Okay, sure, of course, no problem. How could I stop my friend from playing with her other friend? Have fun, you too." However, watching Yunbao and Gilda gradually fly away, Biki couldn't help but feel a bit sad. Even the balloon whistle in her mouth sounded a bit weak. On the other side, Gilda and Yunbao were flying happily, but just as they stopped on a cloud to rest, Biki's head suddenly popped up from below, startling them. "Hey friends, are you coming to play together soon?" Biki, who had set up a big trampoline under the cloud, was bouncing and talking to them. It was hard to imagine how such a small pony could jump so high. Yunbao looked at the bouncing Biki and laughed. "Biki, your method is really good." However, Gilda seemed a bit displeased at that moment and said to Yunbao again, "Hey, Yunbao, how about we race to see who can fly to that cloud first?" Naturally, Yunbao was stirred by Gilda's words, and her competitive spirit flared up. "A race? You'll see." With that, they took off again, and Biki quickly changed her strategy. She tied a bunch of balloons around her waist and flew over to where Yunbao and Gilda were competing. "Hey, you two, you look really cool." But I think Yunbao won, even if it was just by a hair or maybe a feather. Hearing Biki acknowledge her performance, Yunbao immediately felt a bit smug and said to Gilda, "Did you hear that?" Thank goodness Biki was here to see the truth. Gilda looked a bit annoyed at Biki's reappearance but quickly pointed to another cloud, saying to Yunbao, "All right, Yunbao, let us race again. The last one to reach that cloud is the ugly dragon egg. Go." Yunbao naturally accepted her challenge and zipped toward the cloud. However, Gilda didn't follow. Instead, she came directly to Biki. "I think being too high up will make you dizzy." Saying this, she popped several of the balloons on Biki. "Wait, Gilda." Biki wanted to say something else, but the balloons on her couldn't keep her afloat anymore. At that moment, Yunbao had reached the cloud Gilda pointed to, and Gilda followed closely behind her.